Sword of Coming Chapter 951. In the backyard of Yang's pharmacy, Sudian, whose nickname is Rouge, this woman Wufu, alone, guards the empty pharmacy backyard. The younger brother Lingshan returned to Taoya Ali's home. Su Jian didn't feel lonely and depressed. He got used to it when he was a child, but he felt uncomfortable when there were too many people. The pharmacy is in the style of the front shop and the back shop. The decocting and drying herbs are all in the backyard. On the other side of the main house, it is the residence of Old Man Yang. The door of the east wing is closed. Generally, only when Li Huai returns to his hometown to wander around, Old Man Yang will open the door. Only the west wing will be vacated early and given to the Sudian. There is also a utility room in the corner of the yard. There are piles of old objects of various colors, bottles and cans. The key to the room is left to Sudian. Master once told her that when Li Huai returns to his hometown, he will fight with Li Huai. He greeted him, saying what the guy in the room, a lot of old things were left to him and he was free to sell or give away. Under the eaves on the south side opposite to the main house in the north, there is a bench. Sudian never sits on it and he is not allowed to sit there casually. She is like guarding an old shop and also helping Master keep some old rules. Su Dian is a martial idiot, but she is rare tonight. She just sat in a daze on a chair, stepping on the edge of the brazier, thinking about some past events. After finally regaining his senses, Su Dian bowed his head, stretched out his fingers, and twisted his trousers that were slightly hot on the quilt fire. The door of the pharmacy was concealed. Someone pushed in, walked through the front door and raised the curtain. The young man shouted, "Senior sister." The Su shop on the side of the wing room responded, and it was junior brother Lingshan who came to visit. Lingshan entered the house, moved a bench and sat beside the brazier. Su Dian smiled and said, "You are not unlucky when you ask the pharmacy for dinner." Lingshan stretched out his hand to warm up the fire, deliberately pretending to be stupid. "Is there any attention to this?" The house is more lively. The 4 generations are in the same house, and the ancestral home is at the gateway of Taoya Lane. They are not much poorer, but Lingshan is still worried that the senior sister is alone and too deserted at the drugstore. He knew that since the death of the uncle who depended on each other, sister had no relatives in the small town. It seemed that there were no poor relatives who would like to ask a few questions on weekdays. Lingshan took out a package of cakes from the New Year's Eve from his sleeve, and said with a smile, "The shopkeeper sure gave it to Qilong Ali." Su Dian hesitated for a moment and reached out to take over an oil paper wrapped pastry. "Are you really asking about supper?" On the night of the New Year's Eve, people in Fulu Street and Taoya Alley, and people outside these 2 streets, one day in one place, generally do not move around each other. In the old town, Fulu Street and Taoya Lane, there were 4 surnames and 10 tribes. The 4 surnames of the old town of Gaomen, Lu, Li and Zhaosong have always been headed by Lu, because before the fall of the Lu dynasty, it was the suzerain of the De Li Song, and the founding emperor of Lu was with Fu Lu. Street Lushire has inextricably linked origins. In addition, 10 tribes like Yuan, Chao and Xia all had great figures from their ancestors. After they left Lizhu Dongtian, they all became famous. Nowadays there are the 2 surnames of the Shangzhou kingdom of the Dei court, in addition to the sword fairy Chao Shi of Nanpasu Zhou, and the heavenly monarch Xieshur of Luzhou and Beiju etc. Just talk about a Nipe Lane and there are the hermit Qin Pingon, the king Song Jisan of the Dali domain, and Guqin the direct disciple of Zheng Juzhou. There is still the Jinhai Tower in Nanpasua Zhou, where the ancestral home of the sword fairy Chao Shi is stationed. In Sudian, apart from the drugstore, the only person you know in the small town in your hometown is Hu Feng, who is a few years older than her. Hu Feng's family used to run a free business. He would also often work as a part-time job with his grandfather, doing brick and tile carpentry work, or walking down the street to help sharpen his knives. But Hu Feng also left his hometown, but Hu Feng stayed here, and Su Dian had nothing to talk about with him. Lingshan smiled and said, "Guess who I saw in Qilong Lane just now?" Su Dian was silent, chewing the cakes, and it was not worth making a fuss about anyone he saw anyway. Years ago, there was often a shaggy, yellow-faced little girl in Qilong Alley. She pretended to pass by that Qilong Alley accidentally. She walked very slowly, sniffing her nose gently, smelling the scent of pastries, and the girl's belly grew stronger. Growing hungry. The delicious pastries that I dreamed of when I was young, as well as the colorful fabrics in the cloth shop, once made the hungry girl feel that it is the most remote good thing in the world, but when I grow up, I have it on hand. With money, I don't know why, but I don't even think about it at all. Lingshan said, "I took a look at her from a distance, like Wang Zhu in Qilong Lane. He used to be a small town close at hand, but now he is a big figure far away. Su Dian just snorted. Anyway, she is not from the same group. She is not interested in the wealth and prosperity of these fellow villagers. Nowadays, Old Longzhou and Zhenchuzu are recognized as the land of hidden dragons and crouching tigers on one continent. From the perspective of Su Dian, they are nothing compared to the past. The first group of foreigners bought the mountain fairy house on the top of the mountain in the mountains to the west. As long as they didn't resell at a low price in the middle, they are now regarded as a cornucopia of wealth. Later, some monks who were well informed and heard the news came to buy the ancestral homes in the small town with the local people, or bought the snakestones picked up from the dragon's beard at a high price, embedded in the walls. The bronze mirrors I wore, as well as old objects such as ancient coins and porcelain, seemed to overnight, all the worthless things became extremely precious, and the only ones that became worthless were the ones that had been accumulated by ancestors and ancestors. Broken silver or the gold and silver jewelry used by every household to press the bottom of the box. Nowadays, many chi practitioners who are incognito here in the small town live in the simplest form all year round, and use those dilapidated houses as a dojo for spiritual practice. Their household registration and mountain genealogy are secretly under the management of the Longquan County Kiln Affairs Supervision Bureau. As for the Huaihuang County government, they are still not clear about the identity and background of these mountain gods. Anyway, no one has caused trouble. Compared with ordinary county towns, it's a place where the road is not lost, so that the county government affairs are so clear and bright. They are all excellent test words in the state city every year. After all, there is not even a thief who broke the wall, let alone the kind of trivial disputes between the parents. Heaven and earth auras, mountains and waters, magic weapons, these foreign monks who are sharp-eyed and quick to start, have indeed earned them. Just to say one thing, someone once went to the sky to hand fists with the ancient gods who crossed the border and brought a few heavy golden rains to Aquarius. Although almost all of them were taken by the monarch of Beiwei Weishan, even though it seemed to be from the Piyun mountain family prophet, but Weibo is a mountain monarch on a continent after all. The entire Beiwei jurisdiction rises with the tide, the mountains, waters, and the fortunes become strong, and the heaven and earth will become more aura. The cultivators who live in Huaihuang County in the mountains to the west, eat after eating xiainlu she was full. Over the past 2 decades, monks have quietly broken the border from time to time. Shi Lingshan asked casually, "Senior sister, how many people are there in our department?" According to their generations, the genealogy could not be simpler. Anyway, there is a master who teaches boxing. On the bright side, Sudian and Shi Lingshan, there are 2 seniors above them, but Li Er and Jing Dafeng, a dragger. I went to Beiju Luzhou and one went to wuxialover. As to whether there are any other brothers and sisters, it has always been a mystery. Old Man Yang didn't like to mention this. Shi Lingshan once asked and ended up receiving a screaming curse. Old Man Yang has always been like this, or he would not speak at all, or he would talk horribly as soon as he opened his mouth. I want to go outside to recognize my brother. Do you want to hold a stinky foot, or is the Taoya Lane Shirjia hungry for you, and you have to go to another house to ask for a bite of hot shit? After that, Shi Lingshan didn't dare to ask any more questions. Su Dian thought for a while and said, "How many people are there?" "There are a few people on the master's genealogy. I don't know how many are now alive. But apart from Li and Zheng, there are indeed others." Shi Lingshan raised his head, full of curiosity. Su Dian shook his head and said, "I know the names of the 2 senior brothers and sisters, but the master didn't say whether you can reveal their identities, so don't ask more. The 2 seniors and younger brothers in the room have very different temperaments. From Shi Lingshan's point of view, the master didn't say that it was impossible, that's okay. But on the side of senior sister Su Dian, the master didn't say yes, just not." Su Dian suddenly said, "I plan to follow master's instructions. After this year, when Li Huai comes back and tells him something, I will go out for a long trip." Shi Lingshan asked, "Where are the senior sisters going? How far is the journey? Is it the ruins of an ancient battlefield in another continent?" He and senior sister haven't left Aquarius Island yet. The younger generation in the town seems to like to travel far more than the other. Su Dian knew that the younger brother had misunderstood and explained, "I plan to practice alone this time, so I won't take you." Shi Lingshan was disappointed but did not entangle her because she knew the temper of the senior sister. She was very angry, and what she believed would not be changed. Su Dian rarely has a smiling face. "I will meet you next time, please drink." Shi Lingshan just cared about being happy, smiling stupidly. It would be even better to invite others to have a wedding wine. But the young man didn't notice that the senior sister with her head down, her charming face illuminated by the charcoal fire, was a little sad between her eyebrows. One is optimistic, the other is pessimistic. In the eyes of the former, all travels are for the day of reunion. From the latter's perspective, all encounters are a preparation for parting. This trip to go out to experience, when Su Dian has entered the far travel realm here in Howren world, she will go to find a senior named Xia. The other party is far away in the Qingming world. According to Master Xia, Brother Xia is doing well now, but he has changed his name and is no longer called Xia. Just listening to Master's tone, Su Dian could guess that Brother Xia had already saved a lot of family business in that world. Every time Master talks about these apprentices, they usually have a good face. Even if they mention Lier, who is already an end martial artist, there is no smile. The Master left a few oral messages to the unmasked senior Brother Xia, and asked Su Dian to help. The general idea is to let Xia see her junior sister Su Dian, and teach her boxing and swordsmanship similarly to teaching her on behalf of the teacher, and then wait for Su Dian to reach the top of the mountain, and then help the junior sister build a school over there, take root and become self-reliant. After that, the two sides will go their own way, and do not reveal the relationship between the two sides. As for how Su Dian would go to the Qingming world and where to find Brother Xia, Master had already arranged it. Shi Lingshan asked curiously, "Sister, what is the origin of that Li Huai?" It is said that the young hermit once gave Li Huai a nickname. Then, in this small town, Li Huai really has the only one who can live up to it. Su Dian shook his head and said, "According to Xianxia's statement, Li Huai himself has no background, just the most common mortal with naked eyes. However, their master really treated Li Huai as his grandson. It's just that this kind of thing is not envious." Shi Lingshan sat on the side of the house for about half an hour, and left. Su Dian delivered to the door of the drugstore. When the figure of the younger brother disappeared at the corner of the street, she closed the door and returned to the backyard, staring blankly. The bench under the eaves. Senior brother Zheng Dafeng said that this long bench has been kept here for many years, and no one is older than it. The last time I saw Master, the old man was still sitting on the steps outside the main house, holding a dry tobacco rod, swallowing clouds and fog. The Master said something that Su Dian could not understand. The old man knocked lightly on the steps with the dry tobacco rod, then lifted the dry tobacco rod, pointed to the bench and said that the wooden bench was us. Seeing Su Dian hesitating to speak, the old man said that if there is a chance in the future, if you meet there in the Qingming world, you can ask that person and he will definitely know the answer. What does a wooden stool have to do with us? Su Dian was puzzled. A woman with a young appearance, beautiful temples and graceful posture, like a fish swimming in the Dragon-Beard River. As a local river god, she was patrolling her own territory. She was accompanied by a few children-like servants of the river god water mansion. Among the children with immature faces, there were boys and girls. In fact, except for their pale and colorless faces, they are more permeating, and in addition their outfits, looks and childish voices are no different from those of the city children on the shore. Swinging and playing with the goddess of the river, although they are all water ghosts, they have long been used to the water, but occasionally there will be a look like choking water, with hands and feet shaking and fluttering, just like a child who is not good at water drowning in the sun. Generally, it will return to normal soon, and then make faces with people of the same age around you, as if you all think this is an interesting thing. Because tonight is New Year's Eve, according to the custom, the river god Empress gave this group of little attendants a red envelope. The coins in the red paper envelope were all rusty copper coins that were left in the stream in the early years. No way, my own river Empress is a famous thrifty housekeeper. In short, she is stingy. Malanhua, the orthodox water of Longshu River in the Dali court, still stopped at the waterfall at the border of Longshu River and Tiefu River, and then went upstream, passing by the blacksmith shop on the Longshu River. Taking advantage of the fact that the shop is now empty, she poked her head out of the water and glanced at it. I changed 3 masters one after another. The first was Master Ruan, an unbelievable blacksmith who turned out to be the last military sage to sit in Lizhu Cave, born in Fengshua Temple. Later it was Ruan Qiong's apprentice Su Xiaoqiao. A woman Jianxiu who lacked a thumb on her right hand, followed by Lu Xianyang, and a woman from the countryside who looked at her head was not very bright, Yu Qianyue. Now in the Longquan Jianzong, the monarch Weibo personally helped to migrate several hills including the ancestral mountain Xinxiu Mountain. They moved to the north with their brains, which is considered to be a complete land lease settlement with the Lizhu Cave of the past. Every time she swam over the stone arch bridge where the bridge corridor was torn down by the Song family of Dali, and there was no old sword hanging on it, she would be extremely frightened. Swim quickly across the stone arch bridge and came to a deep pool with a blue stone cliff. Malanhua stopped and stood in the water. Several children who were too late to stop, bumped into each other lightly, and after chirping and complaining, there was another burst of laughter. The old woman in Xinghua Lane was visited by a female immortal teacher for revenge. One of the old Ma granny died accidentally, but because of a blessing in disguise, the old man Yang gathered his ghosts and was able to serve as a river woman. He gradually recovered his appearance as if, the more I live the more I go back, and his appearance is getting younger and younger. This Longshu River was originally a stream. After the Chefu River rose from the river to the river, the Longshu River, which was the upstream and source, followed the trend to become a river. And she also became a river from a river woman, and was promoted inexplicably. It's just that nearly 30 years have passed, and finally there is a temple by the river where there is a shelter, but there is still no statues in the temple, not even an incense burner. How could there be such a shabby and distressed river empress? But Ma Lanhua didn't dare to have any dissatisfaction. Year after year she held her finger and said that her life is like a year, which is not an exaggeration. She asked a well-connected landlord to help inquire about the news. On the Zhouqing side, there are still a few elders who knew the name Ma Lanhua, and recognized her appearance when she was young. It is said that there are only 2 old folks from the same generation and age left over there now. The more so, the more Ma Lanhua is in awe of the old man Yang in the drugstore, because if there is no accident he will only wait for the 30-year deadline. When they arrive, the 2 old people in Zhouqing will die. The 6 women of the 3 aunts and 6 women accounted for half of them. The masters who pretended to be fools, the matchmakers who acted as matchmakers, the stable women who gave birth to the women, and the Ma Lanhua of Xinghua Lane were all served. As a result, there was another river Pa. Ma Lanhua sighed faintly. She appeared in the deep green pool, stepped on the water, and the river spread to the stone cliff on its own. So she went up, sat on the blue stone cliff, and took out a handful of white jade from her sleeve. Comb a blue silk, ready to change a bun today. The little guys followed the goddess of water, jumped out of the water, gathered on the cliff, ran around the stone cliff, and started to riotously happily. Under normal circumstances, Ma Lanhua will never allow them to go ashore. Not to mention that during the day the sun is like fire, and any exposure to the sun will cause the ghosts to fly away even at night. What's more, they dare not cross the border without authorization, otherwise they will collide with the Yangjian casually, and the yin and yang will be agitated. If they can't fight they will die. Ma Lanhua looked at these carefree children and sighed. She squeezed out a smiling face with a soft voice instructing a few words of chariots. Don't go away, be honest, don't go to the shore or you will have to go home. Fa waited on the board. In fact, their young life on the shore is not very big. After they become ghosts, they are like falling into a kind of weird imaginary age. They grow slowly. To be precise, it is difficult to grow up, unlike the children in the market. Sprinting so fast, it seems that in the blink of an eye, you will change from a child to a teenage girl, and soon you will reach the age of marriage and marriage, get married and start a business and have your own children and then become very light sleepers. The old man who is used to getting up early, one day slept without opening his eyes. Ma Lanhua raised her head and looked into the distance. In the middle of the night, she would feel burnt when she glanced at Fayin Mountain from a distance. The Dali imperial court first established 3 mountain temples, and Piyun Mountain is the temple of the mountain monarch, which is unattainable. On the southernmost Luapa Mountain, there used to be a mountain who was ridiculed by his colleagues as the Golden Head Mountain God. He was on duty there. There is also a mountain shrine of high standards on the top of the mountain. It is a pity that it was miserable in those years. The mountain shrines and temples are about to become the family temple of the orphan in Nipping Lane. What kind of incense can there be? Ma Lanhua knew that Song Yuzhang, the of the Golden Head Mountain, had a long history. He had been a kiln supervisor for many years during his lifetime. In those years when there was no county government in the town, he was the only official. The former superintendent Chao Gingxin, at a young age, became a servant of Dai after he resigned. On the other hand, Governor Song made Lord Song. A good person had no life and he could not keep up with the good time. As for the mountain temple built on the side of Fengliang Mountain, because the top of the mountain is located at the northernmost part of the mountains, it is closest to the prosperous boundary of the same city as the prefecture and county office. The temple incense has always been very prosperous. Clouds, there is an endless stream of incense burning up the mountain. On the 15th day of the Lunar New Year, the temple fairs on the mountainside and the top of the mountain are even more lively and enviable by the colleagues of the Shanshui officialdom. The main road of the incense-burning shrine is wide and flat like an official on Daoi Road. There are tea houses, wine shops and inn shops along the way. A landlord in Fengliang Mountain who is familiar with Ma Lanhua is an old and dishonest thing, but he dare not toss her up, but every time he meets, old people always have to change the way to say a few bad words like a mouth. If you don't take advantage of it, you will die. And the top boss of the landlord was the mountain master of Fengliang Mountain. With the face of the statue, Malinois vaguely recognized that he was the one who opened a funeral shop in the small town before. Look at the style of the family now. Looking at the situation of my temple, people are more popular than others. To be honest, when the mountain was young, he even asked people to marry him. It's just that for some reason, when she was still Hipa, the other party would still be close to the Longshu River from time to time and meet each other, but it didn't take long before she was estranged. I'm so angry with Malinois. My old lady is just asking you to inquire about your grandson. Isn't she reluctant to help with this little thing? In this Longshu River, the head boss is Xianxia, the of water in the Tiefu River downstream. It is said that she is the person next to the Empress Dowager of Dei. Her face is so cold that Malinois doesn't dare to get close at all. She was also trembling. When she met those subordinates of the Shuefu who always had their eyes above the top, Malinois only dared to make up for a smile, and never dared to put on airs. You must lose your official status. Therefore, Malinois can only speculate about what happened outside the state through the official Shanshui official residence reports from the Xuanhuan temple. According to the promise made by the old man Yang, after 30 years have passed, the old man in the small town who knows her young appearance and identity is almost gone, she can erect a statue of God, enjoy the incense and then temper her golden body. However, Malinois is both looking forward to it and worrying about it. The marriage between the Tiefu River and the Yuya River Water Temple is very effective. The Manta Mountain Earth Temple is also very famous, and Song Duzeroping is also very famous. I went to Chiduan Mountain and Fengliang Mountain, these two mountain temples. It seems that scholars are asking for a sign and wishing, hoping for the success of the imperial examination and cultural protection. The effect is quite good, so until now Malinois has not thought of a way. In the future, even if a statue of her is erected, where does the incense come from? If you want to talk about suppressing water transport, it will be her turn? Being in the state boundary, there is no shortage of rivers and rivers. Malinois brushed her hair and sighed. On this cratered blue stone cliff, children from the former small town who came here to fish in the mallard waters all have their own seats that they have chosen. After becoming of mountains and rivers, the vision of those ordinary masters in the sun is completely different. Located at the border between the mountain and the small town to the west, the humble Jianghu mountain turned out to be a Liju. The Dragon Beard River at the feet of Malinois is a veritable dragon beard, so there were so many priceless serpentine stones in the water that year. As for the other dragon's beard, it is the main street of the town. There are crab shops, iron lock wells and old locust trees lined up in the street. They spread all the way to the east, stopping at the east fence gate. The young bachelor, Zheng Dafeng, the janitor, does not know where he died now, leaving only an unoccupied yellow mud house. There is a literary saying that it is called the tiger's dragon plate, as if those dragon kiln mouths were built on the body of this dragon. In fact, over the years, Malinois has been afraid that the thin and weak girl in Niping Alley will come to her to turn over the old accounts. After all, I used to carry water from the iron lock well, and every time I saw the lowly maid next to this Song governor's illegitimate son, Malinois was often the picky auntie, and she did say something unacceptable back then. After all, the widows in Nipe Alley and the orphan, no matter how poor they are not cheap. No matter how poor they are, they have an innocent identity, but this little girl with a weird name is living well and richly. The woman in the small town back then, let alone point to Jigue, anyway, as long as you quarrel and scold the street, no matter who you are, you can always pick out a bunch of faults and say a few words that disturb your heart and spine. For example, what's wrong with how many stinky money you have in your family? Do you have a cub now? Be careful to cut off the incense from your ancestors. In the future, who the money will go to is not just a matter of two things. It's too ordinary. Wait until one party can't say anything, then scratch his hair and scratch his face. Just talk about bickering, don't talk about hands-on. So the Mama in Xinghua Lane, the Gu family widow in Niping Alley, the Li family wife in the west of the town, and the wine seller Huang Ernyang are all first-class masters. This simple folk customs, Ruan Taijiang, Lu Qin who set up a fortune-telling booth, and Chao Duzhao who is drunk every day. These outsiders have all personally experienced it. In fact, all those who have been in contact with the younger generation in the town, no matter what their status, realm, or more or less, will have similar feelings. Just talk about the Confucian temple discussion. Someone's words gave two resounding new nicknames for the savage co-master Firen and Wen Hai's close disciples. Toyua Mountain lies in the saint, and the Jiashan account loses the saint, who has never won. The young hermit also threatened to give away the private seals carved by one of the two great heroes in the world. No regrets, heart to Howren. It is a pity that the wild big monsters who are qualified to participate in the discussion of Tuoyue Mountain increasingly feel that the young hermit is not his own family. Malanhua rubbed her cheeks. I was slapped hard by the little lady with sharp teeth. She took out several old Xianxia de Beos from her sleeves. The only thing in common was that there was news about her grandson on the debow. In fact, she had long been so familiar with the contents of the above, and she had memorized them back and forth. These years are idle and idle. The River Empress began to change the way to learn a few more words. And this kind of Xianxia official diaries were issued from the Zhou Qinghuang Temple. Basically, there will be 2 or 3 letters every quarter. Qinghuang Yi Zhangping will send the Yinming subordinates to the county city gods and the Xianxia gods at all levels. This makes Ma Lanhua especially proud. When Hepa was a year-round, there were not many mansion reports. When he was promoted to the river god, his official status was equal to the Qinglu of the Dali Xianxia officialdom. Suddenly the number doubled. Compared with the above, there is more than the below. To live a life, people go to high places and the water flows down, and look up at those who are living well. This is a hope for life. If you look down at the things that are not as good as you, your heart will be calm. The woman forgot who said a word. People live hard and deceive themselves, it is hope. Lu Yen took Xiaomo and Qing Tong along the corridor and went elsewhere, deliberately letting the 2 scholars of very different ages talk about housekeeping. The most sage master smiled and asked, Qin Pingan, how did you think of eating books? Chen Pingan was stunned, but soon figured out that the so-called eating a book refers to practicing characters. Qin Pingan explained, before I was at the city head, there was really nothing to do. It just so happened that Li Zhen, who was at the city head next door, lost the Xianxia travels to me and it came in handy. The holy master smiled and said, it's a coincidence and a coincidence just right. Qin Pingan raised his head and glanced at the sky. The most holy master obviously meant something. If it hadn't been for refining all the text of the landscape travel notes, and some accident, even if Qin Pingan had been standing at the head of the city for 10,000 years, he would never have thought of what his brother Cui Yang would do. Probably just like Li Zhen later slandered, only those who have a brain disease can talk to fellows who have a brain disease, and some can make sense and understand. The most sage master's thoughts drifted away, remembering a face. They were all in the ancient sword repair camp. The previous observation of Jianxiu was not that Liz Hen talkative, but a well-known boring gourd who almost didn't talk to anyone. Every time he discussed secretly, he hid in a corner or stood beside Qin Qingdu. Did not say a word from beginning to end. However, if you don't do anything, you can't say a complete victory once you are determined to challenge the sword with others. At least you can guarantee your invincibility. It can even be said to a certain extent that the contemplation of the whole life seems to be living for others, practicing swords and handing swords for the overall situation, so contemplation is the most uncomfortable one among all sword repairs. On the other hand, the dragon monarch of the same generation of sword repairers simply likes to ask people about the sword, as if winning or losing does not matter. Every time he encounters a war, he does not care about life and death, and is far more unrestrained than the observation of, don't dare to die casually. The 3 criminal sword repair leaders, Qin Qingdu, Guanzhao, Longjun, are the creators of the Great Wall of Sword Qi. It wasn't long before they had just gained a firm foothold, and under the leadership of Qin Qingdu, the 3 sword repairmen traveled together. That far-reaching Wenjian Tuotian successfully blocked the great ancestor Tuotian who was only half a step away. As the first co-lord of the barbaric world, the latter failed to refine a world of good time, place and harmony. 15th realm. And the 3 of Qin Qingdu also paid an extremely painful price. Qin Qingdu's natal flying sword Duckweed, completely shattered and had to join the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and Qin Qing also lost hope of entering the 15th realm. Otherwise, according to Dao ancestors' calculation, as long as Qin Qingdu is given 2,000 or 3,000 years of sword refining time, he will have the opportunity to become the 15th level pure sword repair of the unprecedented person, no one behind. Unprecedented because the sword repairmen who were expected to be in this state, under the suppression of the ancient gods, all died on the way. There is no one to come. Once Qin Qing is in this realm, it is like a single person monopolizing the entire kendo, standing on a single plank bridge, and there is no way to go. The most sage master once took the ceremonial saint and went to the Jianqi Great Wall to persuade Qin Qingdu, but the persuasion was to no avail. Qin Qing blocked the 2 students back with just 2 sentences. We Jianxiu don't have to do the right thing. You scholars, remember to keep your promises. Originally, Lord Long was extremely dissatisfied with Jianxiu becoming a criminal. Therefore, during that long journey, Lord Long never thought of returning to the Great Wall of Jianxi alive. He is going to be a pure sword repairer, not a tortured refugee from the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Long Jun wants to use a vigorous way to close the curtain on his life. Therefore, after death, whether it was the Great Wall of Sword Qi or Qin Qingdu, an old friend who used to fight side by side, Long Jun had not owed anything. Long Jun's natal flying sword is named Daxu Immortal Tomb. The Battle of Mountaineering, plus the senior sword repair on the earth before the mountaineering, died without a place to be buried. Countless, his Dragon King can use his life flying sword as a tomb, it is considered a blessing. And Guanzhou has a more special natal flying sword. In the 2,000 to 3,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, the sword repairs that were targeted by the ancient gods most were the observation of having a natal flying sword, the long river of time, not even one of them. Therefore, the journey to observe the Taoism is the most bumpy and dangerous. For the sword repairs who observe and protect the Tao, there is an endless stream. The most sage master put away his thoughts and asked, if it is to trace the origin, the mountain has the source of the dragon and the water. Qin Pingan said, Mr. Li talked to Xuanhuan back then. Although it was an observer, I kept remembering it since then. Li Shixing on Fulu Street once went to Nai Ping Alley to find Qin Pingan. At that time, it was the first time for Qin Pingan to return from a long trip. There were children in Tsing-yi and girls in pink skirts around him. That time, Li Shixing taught a boy in Tsing-yi who was accustomed to speaking without closing the door. The principle is that all the words in the world are powerful. Words and words are connected to form a sentence. The sentence is written in succession and the great road is in it. Qin Ling didn't take this sentence seriously, his left ear went in and his right ear went out. But Qin Pingan has a deep memory. Although he was not sealed on the bamboo slips later, he still kept it in his heart. After that, Xuanhuan took the courage, and asked the scholar a question that she had puzzled for a long time. Why did she suddenly seem to be unable to recognize a certain word when she was studying, and she felt strange? Li Shixing smiled and gave the answer, saying that it was because the text in the book was secretly borrowed by some saints at some point. At that time, the little Nuanshu obviously did not believe in this kind of gods and Taoism, so she directly refuted Mr. Li, and in the eyes of a certain bystander, it was to teach Mr. Li a lesson. This is a rare scene. After that, Chao Jun's ancestral home was repaired at Nanpasuazhou in Nai Ping Alley, and he casually used the excuse of breaking ground on Tai Sui Head to find trouble with Chen Pingan. As a result, this last worshipper of Shindu Mountain that time met Li Shixing, who took the initiative to take the initiative, and met in a narrow lane in the alley. One is just a Qi practitioner in the Sevuing realm, and the other is a sword repairman who claims to be between 8 and 9. Chao Jun made this weird statement because his golden core realm was not worthy of the name at that time, because the sword heart was broken. A Taoist heart is sparse and the mental scene is reduced to a pond full of withered lotus. You must know that before the sword heart collapsed, Chao Jun was in Nanpasuazhou with good sword practice skills, and he was the second to none sword fairy embryo. It's just a sword repairer who is still in the golden core realm even if it is half-slapped, no matter how much paper and bamboo sticks are stuck, and even on the side of a sixth realm cultivator, no matter how hard he puts his sword, he still has a futile end. In that battle, Qin Pingan only took a general look at that time. As his vision became wider and wider, especially after he became a sword repairman, he felt more and more unusual. A Qi trainer who is not a sword repairer facing a sword repairer who asks the sword, and the realm is lower than the opponent, can he win the game? Back then, Li Zixing's calm and leisurely, seemingly very easy to handle sword picking was like handing over to the future sword repairer Qin Pingan, without a word of reason. Since the sword repair one sword can break 10,000 magic. The method of cracking is very simple, you only need to accumulate 10,001 methods. In the years to come, Qin Pingan feels that the two games closest to Li Zixing's realm, once near the hut at the head of the Jianxi Great Wall, and once on the battlefield outside the city. Chaosis boxing method. Excellent swordsmanship. Not only their unexplored prophet, who anticipated the enemy's first opportunity, was very similar to Li Zixing's skills at the time, but also had a kind of aura and situation emanating from Chao Ci and Fei Ran. There is no need for formations, magical powers, flying swords, and no blessings of any foreign objects at all to be able to become a small world on its own. Besides the fight, there are still two people who will give Qin Pingan this feeling. Senior Chui, who teaches boxing for himself on the second floor of the bamboo house in Luapa Mountain. And Chui Dongshan, who is sitting in front of the chessboard and preparing to make a move. Cultivators say that the human body is small. But these few as if they themselves are the big world. The most sage master remembered that a serious Tsing-yi boy in the small town had kindly advised Dao Zhu to say that the name Tao Zhu is too big, so it is better to change the name. The most sage master couldn't help but laugh, jokingly said, "Your fellow Jingqing Taoist is a bit Taoist." Feeling helpless, Qin Pingan laughed at himself. It looks like he invited a young ancestor home. But when he said this, the young mountain master's eyes were gentle. In Luapa Mountain, even if Qin Pingan is used to shaking his hands as the shopkeeper, as long as he returns home every time, there is no gossip that the young mountain owner does not know. On the surface, all the credit is for the millet grains. In fact, Qin Lingjun is also a behind-the-scenes hero who can't be underestimated. He is a diligent patrolling of the mountains and the other likes to hang out. He can't hide what he sees and hears. The most sage master said, Qin Lingjun first went to Luzhou in Beiju to take a trip. He felt that he had made a mistake. It seemed that he didn't want to hide something, but he wanted to return to his hometown earlier. A boulder is settled. You must know that most people make mistakes no matter how big or small. They always hope that they don't know the sky and the earth, and it's best if they don't know it. This is human nature. Qin Pingan was puzzled, and I don't know why the Holy Master would talk about Qin Lingjun. The Holy Master asked, Qin Lingjun either wants face, but on your side he seems to be totally indifferent to face. Do you know why? Qin Pingan really hadn't thought about this. He thought about it and tentatively replied, because I walked through Shujian Lake. All the people in Laobaishan, monks or martial arts, have a tacit understanding, and seem to deliberately bypass the lake of scriptures and never touch this topic. The more flawless the person, the greater the invisible pressure that others get along with. Especially Qin Pingan, a generation with subtle thoughts, and since childhood, the orphans of Ni Ping Alley have been tirelessly pursuing the word errorlessness all their lives. A person who drinks a lot but has never been drunk is terrible. It is precisely because of the regrets and faults on the road of life that it is those unknown consciences that Qin Pingan has become a drunk person who rarely gets drunk, but is a good drinker after all. The most sage master said, in addition there is another intention. Cui Yang knows that the situation is urgent and it is too late to use a relatively gentle method. You use other things to fill this huge hole. As for whether you use conscience, guilt, or use some kind of more harmonious knowledge, no matter what it is, there is a place to go. The most sage xianxia deliberately said it implicitly. In fact, Cui Yang seems to have used a method that is the opposite of checking for leaks and filling vacancies. Within the peace of mind, a waterless heart lake was forcibly carved out. As for sowing, it depends on you. Qin Pingan difficult? Suffer. Otherwise, Qin Pingan's original Taoism cannot bear that divine nature. To be precise, Qin Pingan, whose two lines of good and evil in his heart are extremely close together, is too in line with the divine. The more you practice, the more you ascend. The closer to the divine, this is an involuntary general trend. Just as the most sage master used a whisk to draw circles and discuss the Tao, he deliberately asked Qin Pingan about several possibilities in the end, but Qin Pingan could not answer. In the view of the most sacred master, one carelessness is very likely to have only one result. The thoroughgoing to the sky and occupying the ruins of the old heavenly court, on the contrary, lost to Qin Pingan, who seemed to remain in the world and lost the first mover, because the divinity of the latter becomes more pure. Isn't the old man Yang in the drugstore gambling? And will not lose. Regardless of Qin Pingan, who has all the divine nature at the gaming table, regardless of whether Qin Ping's tug of war between humanity and divinity is winning or losing, in the eyes of old man Yang, it is always a matter of left hand in and right hand out. That one. The ancestor of the male earth immortal in the past, one of the 12 high-ranking gods, holding a soaring young boy Tianjun in his hand, waiting for 10,000 years, it is not a waste of work. That's why Cui Yang made an early move. Then one day Qin Pingan, after he really became the one, succeeded in consolidating the divinity of all the people struggling in the entire Dewdrop Cave, and became the last person left on the gaming table, most of the pure divinity. Even if it is originally uncontrollable, the big deal is that the divinity falls like a waterfall falling from the sky, permeating the heart into the lake, discussing things, not only saving worry and effort discussing people but also beneficial to practice. The Holy Master suddenly asked again, have you ever thought about why Cui Dongshan is afraid of Li Baoping? Back when you went to the Disui Academy to study, Cui Dongshan was on the side of the little girl in the red cotton-padded jacket. Qin Pingan was stunned on the spot, another question that seemed to have never been pondered. Then Qin Pingan quickly became complicated. The second time I traveled to the Great Wall of Sword Qi and reunited with my seniors there. In fact, at the earliest, one didn't recognize the little junior, and the other didn't think he was his senior. However, Qin Pingan was the most complicated with Cui Yang, the big brother of deceiving the master and destroying the ancestor. Because Li Baoping and Bea Pingzu are in a relationship of mutual weal and good fortune and misfortune, who do you think is the work of Peaches on behalf of Li Zheng? The most sage master said in a word, Bai Yujing masters the name of the instructor, has lofty ambitions and transforms into 3 cleansings. It must be in 3 identities and finally truly integrate the 3 teachings. Li Shixing in Lu Street is a Confucian student, Cui Yang is right. Li Shixing knows the truth and will still protect the stability of his sister Li Baoping. Li Shixing chooses this way, so what about Bai Yujing or even Qingming World? Do you believe it or not? The battle in Aquarius Island was unfavorable, unable to defend Dadu and the accompanying capital. Dali Iron Cavaliers had to retreat to the northern capital. Li Baoping had a good or bad situation. Li Shixing would directly break the border all the way and return to the 14th realm in one day, choosing to face it directly. Zhou? At that time, what choice would junior brother Yu Dou and Lu Qin make? Is it even possible for Dao Zhu to make an exception for the first disciple who has the most high hopes? Uncertain. The Holy Master said slowly, but Cui Yang only needs to have this, not necessarily it's enough. So, when Qi Jingchun said Theta gentlemen can deceive others, it was not only for you, the younger brother, but also for the older brother Cui Yang. I hope that the latter's knowledge of work will not go too far. It's a pity that Cui Yang doesn't listen. If he says close to humanity, I really can't blame him. For someone who doesn't leave himself a retreat, we can ask Cui Yang more. What to do? After holding both hands, the most sage master looked up at the sky. A former Haoran Jiaxing, once wild and thorough, is now the new Lord of Heaven. With one's own power, the patriarch of the 3 teachings had to work together to deal with it. Qin Pingan was silent for a long time and asked, Isn't it? Dao ancestor can't do it? The Holy Master shook his head and said, It's really not even possible. Some things are extremely complicated. If the avenue deduces one thing, it will only evolve hundreds or thousands of roads to the end. No matter how many, it will not be difficult, so just casually. A cultivator of the upper 5 realms can go to be a house of yin and yang. The difficulty lies in the fact that when the heart of the people moves, the heart of the sky moves. For example, just talk about things like Feng Yuanshao in the colorful world. Of course, Daozu can be counted as her appearance. Assuming that Deus Xiaojiazi is angry and must target her, then Daozu is equal to contending with the entire colorful avenue. After all, it's not the same thing as the soldier's ancestor. But if there are a few of us, each of them transforms into a world, and only says that we are in our own territory, of course it would be considered exhaustive. I don't think it's very interesting. Daozu thinks that knowing the world will be self-righteous. The Buddha thinks that all generations of Buddhas are his own business. Anyway, as the earliest Taoist in the world, we all feel that Tao is in the world. A flower suddenly appeared in front of Qin Pingan, the vision disappeared in a flash and the Taoist heart shook. When he stared intently again, there was no trace. Just now, I seemed to see a legendary Kirin passing by. The most sage master looked calm and smiled freely. 3 cups lead to the road and 1 fight is natural. Frozen, let's start a pot of wine. Sword of Coming Chapter 952. The state town in the prefecture and the county town in Longquan County are in the same city, and it is naturally more prosperous than the Hongzhou town in the place where the 3 rivers meet. After returning to her hometown, a woman who has been pampered and treated with grace and grace, if she only looks at her face, put aside the crow's feet in the corners of her eyes, she looks at her in her 30s and praises her as a half-year-old mistress. A little bit of conscience. If she is not someone who knows her roots, she will mistake her for a wealthy woman from Fulu Street. There are ground dragons in the house, so wherever you need a brazier by your feet, you can save even the charcoal cage in your hand. In the early years, when she returned to her hometown from Xianxia Island, Shujian Lake, she bought a lot of houses directly on the Zhouqing side. Facts have proved that the big money spent on biting her teeth in the past did not make a lot of money, but made a lot of profits. The rent is a large sum of money in the account. Of course, she hadn't looked down on the gold and silver for a long time, and the fairy money was the money. In recent years, the women went to the house in Huaihuang County, mostly to worship their ancestors during the Qingming festival, and then went back to Nipping Lane to sit for a while. All her thoughts are still on the side of the new home, such as in the house. Everything has to be set up, and there must be a distinction between inferiority and inferiority in order to manage the family well. There is the Xianxia Inn on the mountain in Zhouqing, and she will ask the housekeeper to go there regularly to buy the shanxue dibao. This is not a small amount of expense. After all the money spent is immortal money, but the woman does not have the slightest pain. When she wants to inquire about the Middle-earth Shenzhou, especially the Baidi city, she can also show her own high-door identity. Inside the house, the woman took a few maids to chat about the housework, sat around the stove at night, warmed a pot of glutinous fermented rice, each had a drink, and the flowers were filled with broken mouths. A plump maid bowed her head and took a sip of the fermented wine, and smiled sweetly. Madam, with the young master's cultivation aptitude, coupled with the identity of the young Beidasheng descendant, it will not be difficult to return to his hometown in the future and establish a sect. At that time, the woman brought a few personal servant girls from Hengbo Mansion on Qingxia Island. They are also considered to be in the countryside here. Today I followed my wife to post spring festival couplets, burn incense to invite the door god, invite the kitchen god, etc. The wife's hometown is more elaborate. Just practice makes perfect. Year after year they get used to it. Just like tomorrow is the first day of the first lunar month, I have to follow my wife to the mountain temple on the Fengliang mountain to burn incense. Just moving to Zhouqing, my wife will leave on New Year's Eve and hurry up early to burn the New Year's hearth. Xiang even wanted to stay at the temple overnight, but since the last time Gukan went back to his hometown and had a chat with his wife, the wife didn't deliberately fight for the first incense, saying that my family Gukan talked about it. According to Buddhism, the so-called the first incense is two kinds of sayings. One is sincere and sincere. The incense is one petal, regardless of whether it is in the temple or at home, where the incense is burned is the same, and the other is pious to the Buddha, so every time you worship the incense, it is I'm burning my first incense so I don't have to fight with others. The woman smiled and said, Shao Kan is just one of the direct disciples of City Lord Zheng. Even if Baidi City establishes the next sect, according to the report, most of it will be in Fuyao Island and will not come to our Aquarius Island. Over the years, through the mountain residents' newspaper of the Xianxia Inn, the woman has learned a lot about the world, and the residents' newspaper of the inn is said to have a wider road than the Xuanhuan temple. The woman suddenly looked regretful and said, It's just suffering for you. Who would have expected that a true realm sect would emerge from Shujian Lake? If you didn't follow me here back then, you might already belong to the sect today. The genealogy is a fairy, and when I go out I have to be called a fairy. It's like now, I can only nest in such a palm-sized house and give me a maid. The woman knows that these cultivators in the immortal mansion with the initials of the ancestor put their names on the golden and jade genealogy. It can be called a matter of smoke from the ancestral tomb. There were originally two taboos in the mansion. One was jianghu and the other was Mr. Chen. No one can talk in one place. Never thought that Madame tonight would actually take the initiative to chat about jianghu. The two close-fitting servant girls in the room looked at each other and saw the surprise in each other's eyes. The relatively thin servant girl immediately smiled and said, Madame's words are not right. The woman smiled and asked, Tell me, why is it wrong? The maid said with a serious face, Looking up close back then, it was the lady who took us out of the fire pit by herself. Now, in the long run, compared to being an outer disciple of the real world sect, what's the future? By his side, the young master is the most filial person in the world. How many good luck will we lose in the future? The young master Hongfu Qitian is the proud son of the first class, not talking about the young master's master Zheng Qingzhu, only the teacher Gu Han Xiaosei is an immortal, as well as Lu Daochun, the master of the Liuli Pavilion, and his brother Fu Su, and even the great sword immortal. Which one of them is not a person on the mountain? Any one of them come here. Aquarius Island, let alone the true realm sect, is to go to the divine envoy sect and meet Qi Tianjun, and you should also call each other a friend and then be the guest. Regarding Gu Kan's practice in Baidi City, the only people in the house who knew the truth, except for the women, were their personal servant girls. This is true. It's just that she didn't say everything. Gu Kan's great achievements are only one aspect. They are a few who is not afraid of Gu Kan. Afraid of the demon king of Shujianhu, they are simply scared to their bones. Strange to say, when Gu Kan grew up, he seemed to have become a Confucian scholar. When he returned to his hometown last time, and saw Gu Kan again, even if Gu Kan's expression was gentle, they were even more afraid and became more frightened. If you say that Gu Kan, the disciple of Lu Jimao, the true monarch of Qingxia Island, is a little madman who is likely to provoke murder anytime and anywhere, he is a natural wild cultivator. Then Gu Kan, a young man who was later, seemed to have become a serious and unpredictable person in the city, even standing face to face as if he never knew what Guken was thinking. Guken, who walked out of Jianghu, was seriously inconsistent with his age in terms of state, nature, and means. Before leaving his hometown, Guken called them together in private. Not only did he have no arrogance, and did not have the domineering arrogance of his youth, but he was kind and pleasant. They are even allowed to make a mistake once or twice. But it is required that they need flying swords to spread the letter to Baidi City every year. As for what is written in the letter, they will follow them, even if they are just asking for advice on some problems of spiritual practice. There is no problem. Moreover, the expense of the letter from the mountain is up to him, but he just told them not to talk to his mother about this matter. Finally, Guken smiled with them and talked with you some heart-wrenching words. Don't take it seriously. There are 3 chapters of the agreement between the two parties, one of which is to not allow them to fan the flames on the mother's side and turn a small matter into a troublesome matter that needs to alarm the county government or the Dali court. They are not allowed to cause trouble outside, but if someone else provokes them, no matter who the other party is and what background they have, as long as they are in charge, then there is no need to be afraid of things. Guken will take care of it because they are now half of his family. In the end, Guken got up and fisted with them to thank them, saying that it was the food, clothing, housing and transportation of the mother's mother in the future. The woman had heard the sincere words of the maidservant. She was overwhelmed with joy, smiled and twisted a piece of cake from the plate, and gently handed it over. My little Chan has been able to endure hardship since he was a child. It's so exaggerated. Yes, the hard days that didn't seem to have an end were actually passed by their mothers day by day. Thinking of this, the woman reddened her eyes and took out a kerchief from her sleeve to wipe the tears from the corners of her eyes. The 2 maidservants hurriedly comforted a few words. The woman smiled and waved her hand. It's just memorizing bitterness and sweetness. Anyway, the past is gone. In recent years, more people have come to find her to climb relatives. In fact, they are all things that can't be dealt with. Most of them get some money from the house and they are dismissed. In short, they won't let those swindlers get behind the scenes. In order to prevent it from being unpleasant, she chewed her tongue behind her back, saying that she was a person forgetting her roots, and when she had money, she turned her face away from her. Before Guken left home last time, she had a conversation with her mother, who was dependent on each other. The woman was gratified, distressed, and a bit strange. What's gratifying is that my son has really grown up and is able to provoke the backbone of a family. At the same time, I feel sorry for his son, so young and so sensible. What is strange is that this son is not the same as the son of Ni Ping Ali in his early years and later on Xianxia Island. To be precise, he is very different. During that small talk, Guken and his mother talked about things other than books. At that time, the young man in Confucian shirts also joked that these were all the words he picked up from the ground in the alley at the door of his house. Only when you are poor do you know that the people around you are almost all ghosts. But as long as people get wider, even if they are walking at night, not to mention the people they see, even if they are met on the road. Ghosts are all good ghosts. But people can become ghosts and ghosts will never become people. My mother, now that we have money in our family, we will not be short of money in the future. Then don't save too much. For the people in the house, the rules must be clear and heavy. There must be no ambiguity and you can't be happy. He is very good to all outsiders, and if he is in a bad mood he will be angry with the people around him. After a long time, the subordinates who know the context will look down on the mother, so the mother must not handle the housework by himself. Let the rules come. But apart from the family rules, the mother can be more polite to them. There are 2 kinds of kindness here. One is money, which is the most tangible, and the positions, identities, and titles derived from money. The other is virtual. Yes, mother, as the head of the family, you have a few words and even a look in your daily life with them. No one can buy people's hearts. It can only have both, plus rules and family laws. Our home can last long and be stable and stable. Of course, if my mother takes a sigh of breath in her heart, and feels that after too many years of hardship, she has finally worked so hard to get her head out, why should I be good to them? It makes sense and is willing to treat them sincerely and treat them as human beings. It is best not to treat them as people. Take a 10,000 step back and say that there is a son, even if they are not at home and with their mothers. I definitely don't dare to make a mistake, but I hope my mother will promise one thing: whoever makes a mistake at home in the future, me or when I ask someone to deal with this person, my mother must not sing the opposite. We know everything what we want, that means a person can live very freely, but we obviously don't know anything. If we want to, we will end up in vain. In the final analysis, how to behave in the world and how to behave are 2 different things. I feel that if there is a person who can stay harmless for a lifetime, there are only 2 possibilities. One is a purely good person who never harms others. The other is a truly strong person because they don't need to harm others at all. You can live well. I hope my mother can treat the former kindly and respect the latter. The woman just listened quietly to her son. Gukan used a calm tone, saying something she could understand. When her son grows up, he will teach her how to behave. The woman returned to her senses and joked, "Do you two have a match?" The two maidservants smiled at each other and both shook their heads and said no. On the 15th day of the Lunar New Year, rain or shine, the woman would go to the Fengliangshan shrine, where the incense is full of incense, to burn incense and make a wish, bless her son outside, practice smoothly, and all wishes come true. And every time she got to the foot of the mountain, the woman would stop the carriage and hike up the mountain, asking for a sincere heart. The reason why I often go to Fengliang Mountain to burn incense is that apart from being close to the Zhouqing house, the woman has a little bit of her own thoughts. Back in those days, there were so many sad words in an Iping alley. The woman murmured, how happy she would be if she could see what she is today. Letters Lake Xianxia Island. At the entrance of the mountain, a room was locked, and in the next room lights were on as bright as day. It was Zenji and Ma Dui who came here to watch the night almost every year, no surprises. Ever since Zenji boarded Xianxia Island, he had been lucky. No wonder he missed the old days. Such a Longxing land requires a lot of walking. As for the little girl named Ma Dui, she is a ghost. She has worn fox fur talisman in these years, and seems to like to buy some rouge gouache often to reward herself. After Lu Jimao folded his hands, he walked to the side of the mountain gate archway, but did not go to sit in the house, just glanced at the spring festival couplets and the word blessing over there. It seems that it was the second-class offering to Xianxia Island, and it was posted by the Guaixio who was born in Juxian Mansion and his concierge Hong Su. Lu Jimao walked straight to the ferry, a breeze blew by, and an unexpected guest appeared beside him. Lu Jimao turned his head and smiled, "The Lord is so leisurely." The old man at the side of the ferry nodded, "Really think about it? Don't think about it anymore? I don't want to think about your visit to Myanagi Island next time. Replace this sentence with me." Lu Laoqing, now the sect master of the True Realm sect, is also the first mountain cultivator in Aquarius to rank among the 5 realms. The implication was that if he promised him, Lu Jimao would be the 4th suzerain in the history of Zhenjingzong. Lu Jimao shook his head and said, "My fate, I can't be the leader. I wanted to succeed the suzerain and become the co-master of the book and the lake. It's not that I still know how to be a human being, and am almost going to lose my life, and now I'm afraid of it every time I want to come. Sovereign, don't make it difficult for me." Lu Laoqing nodded and said, "Then I will make another arrangement." Lu Jimao sighed for no reason. Lu Laoqing smiled and said, "People on the mountain don't speak the language of the mountain." Lu Jimao asked tentatively, "Is it easy to deal with the new Hujuan?" Lu Laoqing said, "It's still okay now, and it will definitely become more and more difficult in the future. It's just that compared to the past, it's always easier to fight with that young accountant." Lu Jimao suddenly laughed, "I can't imagine that I will go on a night tour with Lu Laoqing on Myanagi Island, so I don't have to worry about being killed." Lu Laoqing smiled, turned his head and looked at the lake. The islands were like an immovable boat. The waves are scouring the sand and the boat is walking at night. In the early years of Jianghu, everyone had to pay more attention. The only rule was that there was no rule, and it was not easy to sleep peacefully. On the other side of the mountain gatehouse, the ghost repair horse is far-reaching, bringing the concierge with red cakes and staying vigil together here. Anyway, a house is almost the same on the foot of the mountain, and it is naturally close to each other. Zheng Yi said something about the past, but he couldn't get around the two of them anyway, Mr. Qin earlier and Gukan later. Whenever Zheng Yi mentioned the latter, Ma Dui couldn't help but ridicule a few words, and he didn't know that he was afraid of Gukan before. As a result, after the last separation of the year, someone started to cry silently. Was it extremely sad or was he crying with joy? Zheng Yi looked embarrassed. He had never been able to quarrel with Ma Dui. He only dared to mumble. Who knew that Gukan's temperament would change drastically? Mr. Qin once said that if we can become the parents of our parents, and we will become the parents of our children in the future, it may be a debt collection or a debt repayment. When Mr. Qin said this, he smiled and said that he is just a debt collector. The room fell silent, and there was a slight cracking sound of charcoal in the brazier. Ma Dui suddenly exclaimed, "Why didn't I know that Mr. Qin talked to you about this?" Zheng Yi said helplessly, "Mr. Qin and I always have time alone." Ma Dui complained, "When Mr. Qin is alone with me, why don't you talk about it?" They were drinking wine, all made from Hong Su's hometown. Zheng Yi said some of Mr. Chen's gossip about drinking, saying that there are two things in life that are the most chewy. They reunited with old friends after a long time, half drunk after drinking, and turned around. Judging from his life, tea drinking is sweet. Ma Yuanzi's face was a bit reluctant, and he said, Qin Pinyin is a little knowledgeable. People who have eaten ink are different. Hong Su blinked and smiled. Why don't you call Master Qin? Ma Yunji sighed. I have agreed to write a book for me, and write a good story about me and His Royal Highness the Princess. However, I was so slow that I didn't know whether the beginning of the article was finished with a few thousand words. Ma Dui turned his head and looked at Hong Su, who only dared to shook his head quietly, indicating that this was not the case at all. Zheng Yi thought of a woman for no reason. After so many years she would still miss her a lot. Probably the so-called worry is to hang a portrait of a beloved woman in my heart, and I never forget it. Ma Dui asked casually, then Mr. Qin said that he can be married in this life. What is it? Zheng Yi smiled and nodded and gave an answer. It's a return. On the top floor corridor of the tallest building in the town Demon Tower, the Taoist Chunyang with his sword on his back, along with that Xiaomao and Qing, saw a vision almost at the same time. With the building at their feet as the center of the circle, the figures of the gods of mountains and rivers and monks appeared one after another in the sky. They turned their backs to the top corridor and arranged several people in sequence, as if they had opened dozens of mirrors at the same time. It's an unprecedented event. The visitors' Patriarch Hall discusses matters with the same mind, only discussing one thing and doing only one thing. Chong the Dan River water god, Li Jin got 2 gold scrolls, left the bookstore, returned to the water mansion, bathed and changed clothes, put on a jianghu Jingshan official robe, lit a scent of water, paid homage to Tonggishao in the south, and raised his heart. Read the wish silently in my heart, may the dead rest in peace and the living will be safe. The embroidered river god, a righteous of river water with a green snake entwining his arms, respects the fragrance in awe, and may the broken mountains and rivers of Tonggishao be restored to integrity, and the heroes of the battlefield in Yizhou will be reincarnated. Yuye River, the goddess of water, Yi Qingzhu, lit a stick of water scent and muttered words. Adults don't remember the villains. I would like to do my best for Tonggishao and wish Yizhou a peaceful and prosperous territory. The lotus root blessed land in the Luapa mountain, headed by Shui Jiao Hongxia, led the rivers and water gods in the blessed land, each lit a stick of fragrance, the incense curled up into the air, and suddenly all swayed to the south. Beiju Luzhou Jidu, the old Jidu middle shrine is water, and now Longting Holy Yuan, a black-robed boy with a pair of golden eyes in Dajuhas mansion, said aloud his wish that Tonggishao, one the weather is smooth in the land of the continent. Dayuan Dynasty Chongxian Department Yunshao Palace, National Teacher Yang Qinggan, the old man held a tail inscribed with the word Fengshen in his hand, and lit the fragrance of 3 sticks. Next to the old real man, was the Upu-level monk with the Taoist name, Tuning Mud. Yang Hojua looked respectful, holding incense in both hands with the ancestors of the Yang family facing the south. The skeletal beach swayed the river, and Shui Yuanxing He Bo was no longer in the costume of the old boat in a boat, but appeared golden, wearing a robes and lighting the fragrance of water. Dadu Lingyuan Gong Shin Lin, the water of the old Nanshuan water hall. She stands tall like a hibiscus in the distant mountains, standing at the gate of the government with her back facing the Dio Palace plaque. Shun Lin faces the south, wishing Tonggishao Shi and Yanfeng. In the territory of Yinping, that Sangyun Lake Shuijun Yinho, who leads 1 lake, 3 rivers and 2 canals, wears a purple robe, across a treasure bottle island, holds incense in both hands, pays homage to Tonggishao, wishes the land of Tonggishao is rejuvenated and Vientiane is new. On the dense snow peak of Shindu Mountain, Yu Angshan from Moxiandu, after lighting the incense, hopes that the Tonggishao surname will be safe and sound. The old Xiu Du from the Jilin River, the old official of the Dadu Dragon Palace, a teacher who specializes in teaching the etiquette and rules of the dragons and grandchildren, holds the incense and whispers, wishing Tonggishao a new year. Haiyan Huching, the world is peaceful, hope that the new Tonggishao people will be taught by the young and the old. The Daquan dynasty buried the river in the Bio Palace, the of water Lioro. She hoped that the Tonggishao would not fight in the future, and the common people would be able to eat and wear warmth, and the gods and lords on the mountain should be less pretentious and be more reasonable. Hauran, the co-master of land and water transportation in the world, Mrs. Tundun of the road number Qingzhong, prays that the wind of Tonggishao will be beautiful and she will know the etiquette. Li Yeho, the lord of the South China Sea, lit incense, hoping that Tonggishas land, mountains and rivers would meet in spring, and the people would live and work in peace and contentment. The former sovereign of the Yulong sect and the current patriarch of the ruler, the female Shuyun, made a wish and hoped that all the countries in Tongisao would have a good reputation, and that everyone would have enough food and clothing and the people would be happy. According to legend, it was the Taoist alchemy furnace, the woman in the small wine shop, the old throne, the big demon, and brought the newly acquired disciples to the Chioha Paganjo, together to pick up the fragrance of water, pray for Tongisao and resign. The old welcomes the new, the seasons of wind and rain, the harvest of grains and the tranquility of the community. When the Aquarius Island crosses the Changchun Ho, the of water, poplar flower ignites the fragrance of water, and he silently reads that everything is abundant and the people are loyal and filial. Lord Xianhu of Nantang Lake, burn incense and pray, and be sincere in his heart. May that Tongis's grains be ripe, and Rang Rang will be full of homes. Tiaobo River has been renamed and promoted to Laoyu Lake. Sun Wenxian has been recorded at the Changchun Hofu and Dei Court and officially promoted to Yidi Hujin. After fasting, Sun Wenxian lights a scent of water and pays homage. Tongisao Mountains and Rivers, may the vast mountains and rivers in the southeast boundary of the world stay away from disasters and be prosperous and healthy. In addition, there are still Uncle Chidu Lily from Aquarius Island, and Chao Yong as the old Qiantang. Within the territory of Huang Ting, the founder of Xiang Mansion, Wu Yi, the eldest daughter of the old Jiao. The old iron coupons are the of river water, high brewing. The Baihu river water god Empress, Xuanhuan, appeared one by one. The sky over the Aquarius Island is like Baiyujing. In those days, Cui Yang borrowed the two sage characters of mountain and water, with others. The word, mountain, is the natal word for the great sacrifice of Liji Shuegong. Just as Qin Pingan guessed, the word water borrowed by brother Cui Yang is of course the old man who wrote a piece of Wen Tian and Shijianhu. The 4 articles of Mountain Ghost, Shijiang, East Lord, and Calling the Soul were given to Wen Sheng. This old gentleman does not belong to the Confucian Temple Orthodox context and belongs to self-reliance. Therefore this old master's stick heart fragrance will be the most effective stick of water fragrance in the world. It seems that the old gentleman is responsible for closing the matter of the water gods of all continents lighting incense. The scholar again invited all the monarchs to dream, and borrowed from the monarch Wan's Hongshan. You think the 6 classics of God, the more you blaspheme the sea, the more you think about the mountains, and I am the host. Beiwei of Aquarius Island, Weibo of Piyun Mountain, Zhongyue Mountain Jun Jinqing. Nanyue female mountain monarch, Fan Jun Mao, each lit a mountain incense to pray for Tongisao and eliminate disasters. Zhongtu Shenzhou, the Jizengshan Pavilion in the Daong dynasty. Immortal Yunya and Taoist companion Wei Zi, in a broken blessed land full of savages and gregarious ghosts, they share the same incense to pay homage to Tongisao. In the Sui Mountain of the Middle Earth, the name Dajiao, the mountain monarch traveled around, showing a majestic statue of the golden body, facing the southeast direction of the awe-inspiring world, holding incense in both hands. Dayuejushu Mountain is one of the 2 princely prince mountains, the Niaoju Mountain is a real person on land, and Taoist priests conferred the emperor. The Laoshan god Gong Xinzhou of Xiangtou Mountain. Aquarius Island. Daiyunling Mountain goddess flooded the watershed Mountain Weiwei, leading 2 mountain temples to accompany the goddess, facing the south and worshipping incense together. The last person who seemed to be the mountain fragrance for the heroes of the mountains in the world, turned out to be the pure Yang Taoist whose real body was in Aquarius, Lu Yen. On the corridor on the top floor of the Jinyao building, Xiaomao and Qingtong all thanked the pure Yang Taoist beside him, and Lu Yen smiled and returned the gift. The incense curls and the stars are dotted. The trickling water converges into rivers. The accumulation of soil into mountains, the wind and rain are prosperous. The most sacred master looked at the gradually disappearing figures, stroked his beard and smiled. Let's turn around and let the Confucian temple side record them and this matter in the book. Qin Pingan is not good to say anything about this. The holy master asked, do you still have a lot of merit in your hand? Qin Pingan nodded, and roughly estimated that about 30% remained. The thunder is loud and the rain can't be said to be small. To be honest, it is already a big weather, and it has completely solved Tongis's urgent needs. This sounds like ordinary, in fact it is not easy, just like you are pure Takeo. He changed his sigh of anger. It wasn't a move to hang himself with medicine, but he was completely alive. The most sage master turned his head to look at Qin Pingan and said with a smile, but if you end it with this, once you think about it once in the future, you will inevitably regret it once after all? Qin Pingan was puzzled. What else could he do? Is it possible that the most sage master is willing to help match the bridge and gift the remaining 3 virtues to those who are not familiar with the landscape gods? The holy master smiled. I want to make a difference. As soon as I don't want to intervene in any specific affairs now, otherwise, it is definitely not a good thing for Howren. Besides, my face is so worthless and needs to be cheeky. Go out in person, knock on the door of your family and ask them if they want to do this business with you? How proper. Qin Pingon became more and more confused and had to wait for the following. The most sage master didn't sell the gates either and said with a smile, it's not that the family doesn't enter the house. Although the seniors of your Wenxing lineage have different congenital dispositions, there are always a few things that will be particularly sensitive. At first it was Qi Jingchun who entrusted Bai Yi. Then, the people on the Great Wall of Jianxi entrusted Qin Qingdu, and then Jun Chen entrusted Jing Xing Shiping before going to the Qingming world. Finally, it was Cui Huang. He didn't say anything, but what he meant, the Confucian temple knows all about it. In fact, it's the same thing, giving their Confucian temple merits to the younger brother for disposal. The most sage master patted the young man on the shoulder. So, apart from being given hope, it is something that makes people feel that you will not be alone. Then walking with others in the Great Road, it must be the same. Not only these brothers but also believe that their husbands' close disciples, their little brothers, can provoke the future leader of the Wenxing line, and will protect the disciples of his husband. It is also a kind of spirit among the 5 brothers and sisters who have a direct lineage of Wenxing, who does not need to communicate with each other. Maybe we have all been disappointed in this world, but we are all willing to place hope in this world. Sword of Coming Chapter 953, Qingming World Xuandu View. In the Peach Blossom Forest, an old Taoist chief and a handsome young man wearing a tiger head hat walked side by side, followed by a fat man, looking around to see if there were peach branches on the ground to pick up. The Yuanyu Jianxiu who came from the Great Wall of Jianxi respectively settled in the Baiyujing Xinxiao city under the Qingming world, Sui Chu Gong and Shen Duguan. Shen Duguan was only assigned to this wealthy fat man, but the young Jianxiu had a close relationship with the old Guanzhu, and of course it might be a coincidence. Anyway, Yanzhua secretly used the pretense of being an old master over the years and did a lot of business. With such a behemoth as Xuantuguan, the vassal hilltops can't be counted with both hands, plus the dozens of dynasties and vassal kingdoms attached to Xuantuguan. Even if only the Xuanduguan line itself, there are nearly 100,000 Taoists under its jurisdiction. Lots of people. The old view master just opens one eye and closes one eye. Anyway, those money exchanges are all fertile and not flowing into outsiders' fields. If Fatty Yen can get money from Baiyujing, it will be no problem to give him a plaque with a golden inscription. Even the old master can make Lu Lao San's inscription inscribed. The old Guanzhu pondered for a long time and finally opened the skylight to speak brightly. Bai Yi, are you willing to serve as the abbot of Xuandu Guan in the future? Bai Yi didn't seem to be surprised, shook his head and said straightforwardly, impossible. Old Guanzhu nodded, knowing that this is the answer, I just can't help but ask more just in case. The old master was silent for a moment and then asked, the master is unwilling to be a master. A lot of secular and general affairs are more troublesome than being a master, and it is impossible. So what about being a master? The master of a Taoist temple can be fictitious and real. If you are willing to take care of things, you can take care of everything no matter how big or small, you can grasp everything. If you don't want to control it, it's just a false title. You can give it to the Taoist Supervisory Institute, and the seat is known as the pillar of the Taoist temple and the model of the Taoist people. Can be competent, with this example of the jungle, the eyes of man and the sky. It is a bit similar to the Howren Tianxia Mountain School. One person concurrently serves as the chief priest and guest. Bai also shook his head, I really don't want to be distracted. Lao Guanzhu sighed, let you be a deacon even if you are willing to do it in vain, I don't have the shame to show you the jokes for Qingming. In the larger Taoist temples, in addition to the 8 deacons, there are 3 capitals, 5 masters and 18 heads. Yanzhua found that the atmosphere was a bit boring, so he proposed to himself, I think the subject is always the subject and the subject is sitting here or something. If you don't dislike it, the younger generation. Old Guanzhu nodded and answered, dislike it. Yanzhua didn't lose his mind. How could he dare to expect to be the master of any Xuandu temple, but he started to do small calculations a few years ago, and felt that with his deep friendship with the old master, he had to think about that. The post of the head of Shifang Yunshuatang is responsible for arranging Taoist priests from all walks of life. Although there is not a lot of oil and water, Yanzhua has his own means to open up the fortune. Of course, it is not the kind of partial wealth. The old Guanju suddenly said, Fatty Yen, when you reach the Jade Realm one day, the poor Dao will find an opportunity to open a meeting in the Patriarch's Hall, and I would like to mention that you are recommended to be the deacon of the accountant, but said in advance, well, the poor Dao doesn't care for a long time, and the prestige in the Taoist temple is not enough. It may not be successful. You have heard that today, don't be too focused. It is the best to be successful. Yanzhua rubbed his hands and smiled, I understand, I can talk and talk. The accountant deacon, one of the 8 great deacons with the huge scale and solid background of the Shendu temple, is almost equivalent to the Xianxia of the Hubu dynasty under the mountain. The old Guanju turned his head and looked at one place and then left. Bai also wanted to say but stopped. The old Guanju smiled knowingly, if there is a chance, replant peach blossoms. Laoguan focused on the mountains and rivers, and stepped to another place in Taolin, beside the stream, standing a crown of white hair with a girlish face. The master of Laoguan hit the inspector and said in a deep voice, Senior sister. The girl just nodded her head and looked up at the sky. Xuanhuan has always declared that she is a retreat. In fact, I was wandering around outside and now my merits are full. Only then did he return to Xuandu Temple. When waiting for the sky, just waiting for rain. It is not only a far-reaching plan to prepare for a rainy day, but also a rather helpless last resort. So when he appeared this time, he didn't show up with Xiao Sun anymore. The girl retracted her gaze, looked down at the stream and murmured, the peach blossoms are flowing away. This sentence comes from Bai Ye's answer to the layman's question in the mountain. Her name is Wang Sun, and her Taoist title is Empty Mountain. She was once recognized as the most qualified Taoist official in the history of Shendu Temple. It can even be said that several juniors were raised by her. Among them is the present master Sun Huaizhong. The chief heard that it was praise from the outside world. Incapable of achieving nothing, it is her evaluation of herself. In addition to the palace and the crane tower, the river is rolling eastward and there is a mainstay. It is one of the few Shelong stones in the world. There are many buildings and many cliff carvings. Old Yuan Ingjian Xiu Qingquan at this moment was standing on the edge of the cliff with a deceased person watching the water, but the heights of the two sides were very different, and there was a child with immature face standing beside old Jianxiu, but he looked old-fashioned. It is Nalan Burning Reed, one of the 10 sword immortals on the peak of the Great Wall of Sword Qi. It was a little bit later than Chen Shi and Fei Xingcheng. Just because Sui Qugong was so polite, he prospered and moved the crowd, and found him an ascendant monk's fairy, but it was a rare relic left over from the dissolution of a sword repair soldier. Standing on the tall buildings by the river, a young Taoist official standing on a railing covered with books, looked across the river in a daze, a river that looked like a moat. One side is like ants while the other side is very few. Because in the eyes of this person, it is as if this river is used as the boundary. Nalan Xiaowei glanced at the young Taoist official over the Guanxua Tower, who looked like a scholar and said casually, Sai Qugong monk either is in retreat or he is preparing for retreat. Why do you often see this guy walking upstairs and wandering around? Qingquan said, his name is Gao Ping. He has 2 Taoist names, Tai Hang and Zhou Gu. For promotion, he has been responsible for all the records of Taoist priests in Gongguan and the delivery of the official documents. However, in addition to the status of Zhenger Baiying, Gao Ping seems to have an official position, literature. Anyway, I have never heard of anything. If the hidden officer is here, he must know the twists and turns of the doorway here. Nalan Xiaowei nodded and said, it's an old official position in Howran world. It has been a long time and the official hat is very small, but I don't have any knowledge. I definitely can't become this official. Now I don't use it. Cheng Quan looked at Nalan Burning Reed with a look of surprise. Nalan Xiaowei laughed and cursed, what kind of eyes, I know the origin of literature, what's so strange, it seems to find that the kid Chen Pingon doesn't understand. Cheng Quan smiled and said, if you say that you are better than swordsmanship, you are temporarily better than the hermit I think, but if you want to compare the ink in your stomach, it is really incomparable. You are just a coincidence. Nalan Xiaowei broke the subject. Have you ever dealt with him? Cheng Quan nodded and said, I've met several times in the building and by the river. I'm a boring gourd. I haven't talked much about him. There are some rumors about Sui Qugong. I can only chat with that nickname Xiaobai. I seem to like it. When playing chess, Palace Master Wu will occasionally participate in it, but there is a weird rule that both sides only play the first 40 moves. Nalan Xiaowei nodded and said, I also often talked with Sun Jiyuan and the others, winning more and losing less. Qing Quan asked, do you really know how many lines are on the board? Nalan Xiaowei smiled and said, "You just owe it." Xuanhuan smiled and said, "Followed a move?" Nalan Xiaowei ignored the top 3 masters of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and just looked at the young-looking Taoist official, and had a chance to play with him for a few games. At the Guanxua Tower, Gao Ping said with a heartfelt smile, "When Nalan Sword Immortal is free one day, I can come here as a guest. I want to replay the final battle with Nalan Sword Immortal on the Great Wall of Sword Qi together." Nalan Xiaowei smiled and said, "I don't understand those who are silly. You have found the wrong person. You have to talk to the young man in the Summer Palace to talk about this." Gao Ping smiled and said, "Sword Immortal Nalan has humbled himself. It's just a conversation on paper." Nalan burned the reeds without comment. After the salute, Chief Gao Ping turned and walked into the crane tower. After closing the door, the head official's sight was a picture of the situation in Jiuzhou, and there were slight changes almost every year. In the future, the palace owner asked by Yujing, the palace owner Wu Shuangjiang himself, perhaps only half of it. The other half is the world of Kyushu included in this picture. Snowflakes are as big as palms in the wind and snow. A barefooted monk in purple clothes walked alone on the border between the 2 states and walked alone on the border between the 2 states. He came to a land of poor mountains and bad waters where the spiritual energy was almost infinite, and he looked out at a cliff. There are tall people in the mountains. 90-generation monk sits in deep valley in danger. Forever the high wind will not fall. Jianghu, who is leaving Yashang Yao Qing and leaving the Qingxin dynasty, wants to come here to listen to the others' opinions. After getting the ambiguous answer, Jianghu just laughed it off and continued to travel far away. Quietly entered the boundary of Yuzhou. In Zhulu County, which is said to be the site of an ancient battlefield, there is a Qianhu bridge in a place called Jiameng. A village woman walked out of a Tongtua lane and crossed the bridge with a load. A bamboo basket was carried at each end of the load, and 2 children were sitting in the basket. Jianghu smiled and said, "This is picking up the 2 ancestors." In the remote area of Yuzhou, there is a small Taoist temple named Xuanhuan. On the street that is not wide outside, a book stand was set up at the corner of the street. There are not only novels but also comic books and comics. You can only rent but not sell, and you can read a book for a coin. On the high and low benches, there were some juveniles wearing open pants, and there were also a few idle young rascals who were chatting while flipping through the books. The stall owner is a fair-faced young Taoist priest with thick eyebrows and big eyes. Zhushu Temple is a small Taoist temple in the small county town. Although the sparrow is small and has all 5 internal organs, Mao Zue is a classic creation of that small Taoist temple, that is, it is in charge of food. But anyhow, he is a Taoist official who cleans up inflows. Walking on the road, being called by someone can have a master suffix. And his master is also a Taoist scholar of Taoism, second only to Guanzhou in the supervisory court, the 3rd place. The young Taoist officials set up a book stand here, but in fact they can't make a lot of money. When they were young they were mountain runners. It stands to reason that he is a Taoist official, and his appearance is not bad, so he shouldn't be a bachelor. But the problem is that neighbors in the neighborhood say that this surnamed Master Mao is a bit confused. I often froze in a daze, or when I was eating my face would burst into tears all at once, but the problem was that there was no cry. Over time, no one dared to propose a marriage. Otherwise, the Taoist master who has a degree which is not sweet and delicious. There was a saucepan wrapped in oil paper on Mao Zhu's palm, with 7 or 8 garlic cloves in it, and he was chewing slowly. A young Taoist priest came on the street. He was wearing a xuanhuan scarf with a hard-brimmed round hat, showing his hair bun, and ran across it with a boxwood hairpin. The outgoing Taoist stopped, looked up at the plaque of the small Taoist temple, smiled and said, "It's a good one to make up for the deficiency. Only by holding the way of surplus and damaging it can you avoid the regret of Konglong and the sorrow of the universe." The young Taoist turned his head and smiled and looked at that Mao Zhu. A big state, a small country, a big county and a small county, a small Taoist temple but a big monk. Not but there is, but it is. Because the Taoist audience and the Taoist temple itself were transformed by this Taoist priest. Mao Zhu turned his head and looked at that person and sighed, "It's closed." The children immediately became unhappy and Mao Zhu had to say, "Next time everyone reads 3 books, no money will be charged. There is nothing next time anyway." The children broke up in joy. As for the young men and women, they didn't care about anything. They stubbornly made a few curses and left. The main reason was that the foreign Taoist priest did not seem to be a good stubble. The young Taoist said with a smile, "It took a lot of effort for the boss to find here. No wonder Master Lu couldn't find you." Mao Zhu said, "It's not that he can't find me, but he doesn't need to find me for the time being. The young Taoist said with a smile, anyway, it is the first step for the poor. The Qingshan dynasty can't protect you. Yao Qing has too many concerns and his realm is a little too close, so he said hello to Pindao. The poor Earth Lung Mountain, as soon as the big formation opens, you will go to Huayang Palace's old ancestor cave to hide, protect you for 100 years, it is not a big problem. Anyway, all the expenses of opening the mountain gate, the poor way can be Qingshan dynasty reimbursement. Mao Zhu sneered, don't you worry about the next moment, he will be right in front of you. First, the skills of the poor way of formation, and the means of covering the secrets of heaven, are not too bad. The young Taoist priest walked over to the stall, picked a bench to sit down and smiled. Furthermore, it's obvious that those who don't deal with Bai Yujing already have Xiandu Temple and Sui Chu Gong, and there is one more Earth Lung Mountain. It's nothing, it's really invincible. A certain country in Yuzhou whose national strength does not lose to the Qingshan dynasty of Bingzhou, among which the Hongnong Yang family has been the backbone of the temple since ancient times. The Yang family has always been the biggest pilgrim in Huayang Palace. Not only the money for incense, but also the many Taoist officials in Daifishan came from the Hongnong Yang family. As long as it falls into the hands of Bai Yujing, who is within 100 years, he will be punished or not, and he will be punished severely. These are actually nothing anyway, everyone knows you don't never deliberately targeted anyone, just discuss the matter. The problem lies in this Dao's second child. Every time the person who violates the prohibition is accounted, he will kill or punished heavily. In addition to the matter of the matter, he will also be investigated for, teachers are not strict, the teacher's fault, and the whole mountain head is bowed. This is nothing. There was once a young man in Shan who was deprived of the Taoist priest from the world and could not be employed as a Taoist official forever. He was not convinced, not for himself, but for the master and Shan Tao, and insisted on asking for an argument and justice with his second son. And this person was not only born in the Hongnong Yang family, but also the youngest disciple of this young Taoist priest. As a result, there was an uproar. The former Taoist official surnamed Yang not only adds to the crime, but also affects the family's father's fault if the son does not teach. Back then, a respected old Taoist priest, one of the 10 people in the Qingming world, stood on the border of Bai Yujing that time, looking at the 12th floor of the 5 cities of Bai Yujing from a distance. And he is the ancestor of Daifishan Huayang Palace, Gaogu, and his Taoist name is Jiue. It is recognized as the #1 alchemy person in the world. Mao Zhu shook his head and said, you still look down on that person too much. Gaogu smiled and said, why don't you put it another way, is Gaogu overestimating himself? Mao Kong twitched at the corner of his mouth, this joke sounds good. Chunyang Taoist fellow once said that a golden pill was in my belly, and I knew that I could not help it. Gaogu said, my generation is fortunate to be born as a human, but can also climb the mountain and cultivate the path. What we ask for is to break the sky, but the fundamentals are just to maintain humanity. As for you, the real man of bones, after all, unlike the walking dead, you are seeking humanity. Prove the Tao self. Fellow Taoists think so? Mao Zhu was silent for a moment and said, wait until I finish eating the sauce and garlic cloves. A logging yard was newly set up in Yuzhang County of Dali Hangzhou. And Yuzhou, which is connected to Hangzhou, had set up a weaving bureau before that, which was in charge of supervising the weaving of textiles needed for royal and official use within a prefecture. The first chief official was a young official named Li Baozhen, who was born on the battlefield and had wuxuan. But even the provincial governor is not qualified to look through the files of this person. When Li Zhizao took office, he brought only 2 personal servants, serving as the assistant officials of the weaving bureau, both of whom were surnamed Zhu. According to local chronicles, the land boundary of Diyu Yuzhou often has loud noises and thunderous noises around noon in the middle of the day, hence the name Yuzhou. In the middle of the night, the weaving officer Li Baozhen took 2 deputy officials to visit the Yuzhang County logging yard. The group of 3 saw Lin Jingqing, and Li Baozhen held the ceremony for the younger generation and said, Uncle Lin, my nephew took the liberty to visit. Lin Jingqing, who was sitting watch by the stove in the study, just nodded in greeting. Seeing that Li Baozhen seemed to intend to continue talking while standing, Lin Jingqing fiddled with the charcoal a few times with the tongs and pressed it a few times, indicating that the 3 visitors would stop standing. All right. In fact, as the 2 parties, it is impossible to talk about official affairs. The newly established Yuzhou Weaving Bureau and Hangzhou Logging Institute, similar to the earliest Longquan County Kiln Affairs Supervision Bureau, belonged to a kind of sinking of the Dei court. Institutions, government offices are secretly documented, and go directly to Tianting. If the two chief officials come into contact with each other privately, plotting something is a big taboo in officialdom. But the general human relationship, it's not necessary to be too deliberately alienated. As for the yardstick during this period, it depends on the practice of the respective public practice. Just like this meeting tonight, both Lin Jingqing and Li Baozhen will take the initiative to record the files, and even if they deliberately conceal it, we've the bureau or it is the logging house, and there will definitely be some officials who will let His Majesty the Emperor know about this. According to Dallas New Code, the rank of Yuzhou Weaving Bureau is much higher than that of Yu Zhangjun's Logging Institute. As the Chief Weaving Officer, Li Baozhen's official title is from the 4th rank, plus some concealed ones. The authority to say that Li Zhizao is a half-ranked official is not an exaggeration. The 4 people were sitting around the stove with an iron net sandwiched on the brazier, roasting some golden rice cakes and tofu cubes, probably even if it was a midnight snack. The father and daughter surnamed Zhu have long since left their bases. They followed their son Li Baozhen and wandered outside for more than 20 years. After being polished by public practice, they fought on the battlefields with no swords, lights and swords. Now Zhu He and his daughter Zhu Lu are separated. It is a golden-bodied martial artist and a 6-world martial artist. The latter just broke the border at the beginning of this year. Old Wu Fu nearly 60th birthday, slightly frost on temples. Lin Jingqing turned his head and looked at the old man and said with a smile, Zhu He, we haven't seen each other for many years. Zhu He smiled and nodded and said, it's been 20 years since we last met. Lin Jingqing was one of the first locals who left Lizhu Cave and moved to the capital. Although Zhu He was the nursing home of the Li family on Fulu Street and was a family-born child, in the early days in the small town, Lin Jingqing was the assistant officer of the superintendent's office. He often accompanied the superintendent to inspect the kiln entrance, and the Li family owned his own. In the long kiln, Zhu He is taking care of specific affairs, so the two parties often meet and are not unfamiliar. Lin Jingqing turned his head and asked, Zhu Lu, have you ever been married? The woman was a little cautious and shook her head gently. I haven't married yet. Lin Jingqing nodded and said, knowing that you were a kid makes you happy. Zhu Lu looked straightforward. Li Baozhen actually envied the father and daughter. They were able to tell Lin Jingqing a few words. Unlike himself, he came to this logging yard today just to visit the mountain. Regarding Lin Jingqing, a hidden official of the old Supervision Bureau, Li Baozhen knew the approximate depth of the water after only one pass. Just like the upright 3rd-rank Yuzhou provincial governor, he couldn't access the files of a 4th-rank weaving officer in his own territory. This is Li Baozhen's confidence. As the chief officer in charge of the entire southeast espionage of Aquarius in the past, Li Baozhen has come into contact with many secret files of Dallas espionage. When he took office, Li Baozhen smelled a very hidden and unusual, and even produced a certain inference that made Li Baozhen feel a chill in his back. This unsmiling Uncle Lin in his childhood memory may be the national teacher Cui Yunnan in Lizhu. A key chess piece in Dongtian, and this seemingly inconspicuous chess piece, is very likely to affect the trend of the entire Dali court to a certain extent. This is an official intuition of Li Baozhen. Lin Jingqing glanced at Li Zhizao, who was sitting in distress. He was not young anymore. In his years of no doubt, he was a 4th-rank official. If he put aside his identity as the confidant of the emperor, in fact, in the 2 temples of Dali capital and the companion capital, the Bureau of Weaving belonged to the Dali imperial court. The ad hoc institutions belonged to the cold bench sects that drifted away from the borders of officialdom. Therefore, unlike the disciples of the Xianghu state surnames like Chao Gingxin and Yuan Jingding, they are too eye-catching, but some people do seem to be born into officialdom. In addition, the only one involved in the officialdom of the Li family in Fulu Street, which has a profound heritage, is Li Baozhen. Lin Jingqing flicked the charcoal fire lightly with the tongs, covered in the dust, and said calmly, a person using wisdom is to burn charcoal for warmth. You must learn to keep a low profile to keep it burning for a long time. Li Baozhen nodded and smiled. In addition to being thrifty and keeping the house saving charcoal, we must also increase wisdom. Cutting wood and burning charcoal in the mountains is another kind of charcoal, and buying charcoal with people is another kind. In addition, burning charcoal for heating in the cold winter is not only in your own control. When the fire is good, you should also pay attention to the people sitting around the furnace, and try to prevent everyone from feeling that the temperature of the charcoal fire is too hot. Lin Jingqing nodded, inferred from other things is a smart man chatting effortlessly. The three younger brothers and sisters of the younger generation of Li on Fulu Street indeed all responded to that admonishment. Lin Jingqing asked casually, "Is there any insight after being an official for so many years?" "Don't despise anyone." Li Baozhen said, "Emperors and generals, traffickers, pawns, gods on the mountains, ghosts and spirits, each has its own merits, especially pay attention to the fact that the lower and the lower have the upper and the upper wisdom." Zhu Lu hesitated and said softly, "Uncle Lin, for so many years, the son has always liked to deal with the three religions and the 9 Lu, but there are not many intersections with the officials of Dali." Lin Jingqing smiled and said, "Don't use Qianlong." Li Baozhen looked as usual. Lin Jingqing said, "I want to get a comment about seeing the dragon in the field. I almost mean it. Of course, I'm working as a logging yard. I just met a junior from my hometown and couldn't help but say a few words about relying on the old and selling the old. No. Senior official of the Li Jizao, don't take it seriously." Li Baozhen smiled and said, "It was after many years of leaving his hometown that he knew how precious the old sayings of the old people in his hometown are. Different from people in ordinary places, the farther and longer they leave their hometown, they will feel that their hometown is smaller. The young people like Liju Dongtian are more promising. Without exception they will feel that their hometown is big and deep, not bottomed out." After chatting for about half an hour, Lin Jingqing still didn't have much words. Most of it was Li Baozhen looking for a chat. Zhu He would also talk about the past. Lin Jingqing never showed impatient expression. Li Baozhen left the logging yard with Zhu He and Zhu Lu. After leaving the county, Li Baozhen sacrificed a talisman to take care of Zhu Lu and returned to Yuzhou, but instead of heading straight to the weaving bureau, he went to a place. Hilltop. The night was heavy and Li Baozhen had nothing to do. Sitting cross-legged on the bow, he picked up a ball of light condensed by aura, and the boat was swiftly stunned, drawing a stream of fireflies in the night sky. The father and daughter were silent, each with their own thoughts. Zhu He has been in the 7 realms of martial arts for many years, and after a few more years of physical strength, he is expected to travel far away as a pure martial artist. According to the arrangements of the second son, as long as he becomes a remote traveler, he will be transferred from the weaving bureau to a local military attaché. The official position will not be too high, but there are military merits and martial arts in the body, but also a far-flung martial artist, presumably not too low, then in the future building ancestral halls, compiling genealogy, and enshrining ancestral gods will no longer be a luxury. Zhu He, a martial artist with the status of a lowly nationality in the past, has done this, and it is also considered a glorious lintel. Zhu He has not always been a very ambitious person. If it were not to repay the kindness of the Li family, he would also need to make long-term considerations for his only daughter, Zhu Lu. In fact, Zhu He would rather be able to leave the officialdom and stay away from the treasure bottle of the Dali dynasty. In the southern part of the continent, a certain country settled down on the rivers and lakes. Zhu Lu has a complicated mood. Zhu Lu, who has been away from home for many years and is no longer a girl, occasionally thinks, if she hadn't left the school team back then, what would her life experience be like? At the beginning the group left the town, walked through Longshu River and Chefu River, past Chiduan Mountain, and finally reached Hangzhou town. Then there was the storm and they parted ways. If she never separated, she followed to Desui Academy? Li Baoping, she and father. Lin Shi, Li Huai, and that person. Zhu Lu felt that there were 2 groups of people at that time. Although they were in the same group, they were 2 kinds of people. During the period they met a man wearing a hat, a sword, and a donkey. He called himself Aliang, a kind-hearted and a swordsman. He also claims to be invincible in swordsmanship and peerless. When serious he even feels terrible. He can use swordsmanship freely, not splashing water, and even if he is not good at swordsmanship when he wets a corner of his clothes. So every time he walks by the river, Li Huai wants to be Aliang. Standing on the shore, picking up a pile of stones by himself, let Aliang shook his arms about the so-called swordsmanship, or waited for the rain with his fingers. It has been noisy until the end. Even an honest person like Zhu He feels that the seemingly unfathomable swordsman is a liar who can only talk about it. As a result, in the place where the 3 rivers converge as if the rivers and waters are separated and combined, it seems that 3 completely different life paths have just been separated. She and her father sadly left Hangzhou town and followed the second son of Li's family on Fulu Street. Li Baoping and his party continued to Desui Mountain Cliff Academy. As for the shameless embryo, he broke the sky on that day and went to the Qingming world, and he was able to question both the fist and the sword with the second head teacher by Yujing, and then he was able to enter the 14th realm as a sword repairer. Lin Shui has served as the temple blessing of Dadu in the middle of China. He is already a monk in the nascent Soul realm. It is said that he has recently started to retreat. Li Baoping is already a gentleman in the academy. Even that Li Huai somehow became a wise man of Desui Mountain Cliff Academy. As for that person, it is on the mountain road of future life, Ichijuechen. After I heard that at the border of Dei, there were 3 more students in the school team. The white-clothed boy Chui Dongshan took 2 Lu family survivors, Yu Lu and Thank You, and traveled to Desui together. Yu Lu, the prince of Lu's subjugation, was already a martial artist in the remote travel realm. Thank You for being a land god. Except for Li Baoping, the little owner of the Li family on Fulu Street, everyone else is simply a group of unreasonable monsters. Especially the mud-legged man surnamed Chin, Straw Sandal Hatchet, was once a thin young man like black charcoal. Later, when I learned that the other party had bought many hills including Shitsi Pashan, it gradually became like a fairy mansion on the mountain. There are some worries in her heart, but she feels that as long as she follows the second son, everything will be worry-free. Later, when Luopashen asked for a gift to Zheng Yangshan, Zhu Lu was even more worried, but her father advised her not to do this, saying that this person has a simple temperament and would never turn the old account with our father and daughter. Later, a report from the Shanshui mansion of Shenzhou Shanhaizong made Zhu Lu completely panicked. Zhu He sensed that his daughter's concerns were serious and asked softly, "What do you think?" Zhu Lu smiled and shook his head, "Nothing. There is a scenic spot in Yuzhou, named Tianzhufeng. There is a high peak, and every sunrise and sunset, there will be a sea of golden clouds and the scenery is magnificent." A middle-aged but not yet married general with real power, stayed overnight at the Shanzhong Daoguan, ready to watch the sunrise here. The man was born in the Dali domain, but he has achieved the high position of General Yuzhou. Civilian Lu Qingfeng and military commander Chao Mao are all very famous high-ranking officials from outside Dali. According to the rules of the Dali court, the military commander is the ultimate patrol hunter. He has the highest official position. From the first rank to this step there is no official title. Only the few posthumous titles and false titles are exquisite. That is, there are a total of 12 generals in Xijing, 4 towns and Siping. Now half of them have followed Song Changjing to the barren world, and the remaining half are stationed on the long border in the middle of Aquarius, and then the generals of Yuzhou, but not all. There are all states, but Dali is only set up in places where military experts like Yuzhou are in battle. In the middle of the night, Chao Mao left a few soldiers and a monk who accompanied the army, left the temple built in the mountain alone, climbed to the top of Tianzhu Peak, and found a flat place, moved a stone as a bench and sat silently. Chao Mao suddenly narrowed his eyes and a talisman suddenly arrived, changing its trajectory a bit, not going to the gymnasium, raising the route and falling to the top of the peak. After Chao Mao saw the 3 people on Fuzhou clearly, he was indifferent and didn't mean to stand up to meet him. A 4th-rank weaving officer from Tianfilu Street, Liz Hudong, talked about personal relationships, but met a few people. Nodding friends are not counted. When talking about official business, both sides are working in Yuzhou. Everyone I can't control anyone. Li Baozhen clasped his fists and smiled, "I have seen General Chao." Chao Wu just nodded and didn't ask the other party for coming. Li Baozhen moved forward and squatted aside. Zhu He and Zhu Lu, his father and daughter, were standing not far away. Chao Wu saw that Li Jizao actually put on a posture of being dumb. He really didn't want to be disturbed by an outsider. He frowned slightly and asked, "What's the matter?" Li Baozhen smiled and said, "I just want to talk to someone who is nostalgic, otherwise he will go directly to the government office to find General Chao." General Chao Wu of Yuzhou, under the command of the hunting envoy Su Gaoshan, originally followed Dei Tiechi all the way south to Old Dragon City, the southernmost point of a continent. Later, the Dayu dynasty of one country and one continent had to use the Old Dragon City as the Old Dragon City. The stronghold, with the force of one continent to resist the monster army in the wild world, the Dalibian army fought and retreated to Dadu in the middle of Aquarius Island. One went south and the other returned north. In these 2 uninterrupted battles, Chao Wuli made a series of exploits. Although he was not a native of the Dei dynasty, he eventually stood out and became the most promising one among the old generals of Su Gaoshan. In the first month of each year, Chao Wuhui took time out. In the past, he went to visit the widow of the general in Dali capital. Now he is going to visit Su Gaoshan's ancestral hometown for New Year. It's not that there are no gossips in the officialdom of the capital. Some say that he is pretending to be shown to His Majesty the Emperor. He wants to take the opportunity to win over the old department of Su Xuanshou and stand on his own mountain. There are also some harsher words saying that he is burning a cold stove. Chao Wu, it didn't matter. General Su had a good understanding of himself. When General Su was alive, it was good for New Year's greetings or congratulations. The gate of Su Mansion on Cheer Street was overcrowded. There is no shortage of him. Today is different. General Su is gone. Inside, no one is missing. He can't be missing. Chao Wu said, Li Jizao, it seems that we are not familiar with it yet. Li Baozhen asked with a smile, when will General Chao return home in good shape? Chao Wu smiled and said, why did Li Jizao say this? Han Jingling, the current emperor of Shihao Kingdom, the generals of Huanghe and his ilk, and Chao Wu, the current general of the Dali imperial court, could not be equal at all. If Chao Wu was willing to regain his identity, even if he deliberately removed the identity of General Yuzhou and returned to Shihao country alone, it would not be impossible to change his dynasty. Li Baozhen was born as a spy leader of Dai, and of course he knows the true identity of the general of Yuzhou. Chao Wu's real name is Su Mao, and he comes from Shihaguo, one of the vassals of the old Zhuang dynasty. Before he went to the court of Dai, he was xianxia. The rank of military commander, attached to one of the young princes. Su Mao has an ancestral long scorpion, recognized as the first person in horse warfare, Shihao Kingdom, and everyone knows the name given by the imperial emperor, Heng Fu Shirlang. Su Mao was originally the confidant of the Prince Han Jingxin, and the Su family was one of the mainstays of the Shihao Kingdom's frontier army. Su Mao was frustrated. On the other side of Gaoshan, he started as a scout commander and was promoted step by step to the current general of Yuzhou with his solid military skills. However, Su Mao was still smart and knew that he was incognito, so he used the pseudonym Chao Mao early, otherwise Su Mao's work would be used. As a matter of fact, once it leaks out, don't even think about getting involved in the Dali frontier army. After all, in order to stop Dali Iron Cavaliers' southward horseshoes, Shihao Kingdom did not hesitate to light up all the frontier troops and trap the capital, but Dali Iron Cavalry, from military commanders to school officers and soldiers, turned to the soldiers of Shihao Kingdom who did not hesitate to hit the stone with pebbles. Quite respectful. Li Baozhen shook his head and said, Brother Su Mao, why should I ask you knowingly? Chao Wu squinted his eyes and said, the emperor meant it? Li Baozhen laughed dumbly, picked up a stone at his feet, and gently threw it away from the cliff. Your Majesty has always trusted Su Mao brothers. What's more, our Dali frontier army has been from the patrol hunter to the general military soldiers. Regardless of your background, just looking at your military merits, how can your Majesty lose a meritorious general and the mainstay of the frontier army because of the status of Brother Su Mao, who will have a lot of troubles? Chao Wu said, I was the one who led the war and I was the one weaving with you. Now it's a peaceful situation where there is no war to fight, but I can't urinate in a pot. Li Baozhen smiled and said, in the words of my hometown, we are old brothers. Chao Wu sneered and said, it's not a fellow villager in the same year, so why did Li Jizao say this? Li Baozhen said, Brother Su Mao and I are of the same zodiac. In my hometown, let alone the same zodiac, they are both married sons-in-law. When they meet on the road, they will also shout for the old brother. Zhu He scowled. Zhu Lu held back his smile. The son was talking nonsense again. Chao Wu had no patience. If it's okay, don't look for trouble. Li Baozhen found a few more stones and threw them off the cliff. You and I have met that person before and both suffered from him. Chao Wu was silent, his thoughts drifting away. In the early days of Shihao Kingdom near Shujian Lake, two groups of people met on a narrow road in the wind and snow. A young man in a cyan cotton robe with two entourages. Ghost repair boy Zenji, female ghost Ma Dui wearing a fox fur talisman. The Prince Han Jingxin, who has not yet been entrusted to the feudal clan, is personally guarded. He is the first person in the martial arts of that stone country, and the martial artist Han is in golden status. There are also two confidants, the young General Su Mao, who is known as the Heng Fu Shirlang, and the mansion worshipper Mr. Zheng. After the turmoil, Su Mao personally killed the more than 40 horsemen who had been the elite obedience of the palace. Then cut off the Prince Han Jingxin's head with a saber and hung it around his waist. Picked 3 war horses and planned to stop there. Leave your hometown, find another way out and get a new life. It's just that Su Mao didn't leave in the wind and snow, but sat on horseback, waiting for the cotton-clothed man who was chasing Han to return to his original place. The latter threw Han's head to Su Mao, and Su Mao was not polite. He hung his head on the other side of the saddle. It was also a great achievement, and he used it as the name of the caste. At that time, The Shihao kingdom was one of the important vassal states of the old Zhuang dynasty. From His Majesty the Emperor, to the 100 officials of the civil and military temples, to the commanders of all roadside military officers, almost all of them were the main fighting faction. Although the national power is very different, Shihao country failed to cause too many casualties to the Dali cavalry, but even if the northern frontier army was all out, the capital was besieged by Su Gaoshan's army, even if the Guizhou was cut off, it would not be with the Dali Song clan. Bow down and proclaim himself. For example, the Prince Han Jingxin once led Su Mao and his party to personally kill 2 Dalibian army scouts with monks who were attached to the army. It's just the general trend, the end can only be pebble hitting the stone. As for Su Mao, who fell into the disadvantage of the protector, even if he managed to sneak into the capital alive and saw the emperor of the Shihao kingdom, he was not accidentally given to death or was thrown into the battlefield. It is said that he would make up for his merits anyway. It's all dead. After all, the death of a prince who was originally expected to inherit the Datong was not a trivial matter. Su Mao simply took refuge in the Dali general Su Gaoshan. Li Baozhen said in his own heart, "Besides, I have also met a person with the surname Zheng. He once promised to give me an official position. If there is no guess, he also promised you an official position, Dali patrol hunter." Meh. Su Mao asked back, "What about you, Xiangju country's surname?" The Su family has an ancestral motto passed down by word of mouth. It roughly means that the descendants of the Su family will need to repay a benefactor who goes to collect debts in the future. The descendants of the Su family of Shui, after seeing this person and ascertaining the identity of the other party, they must unconditionally repay the other party's kindness. Although he has no regrets, there is no room for bargaining. This long chrysanthemum passed to Su Mao is already the 5th generation. The Su family of Shihao kingdom, loyal for generations, threw their heads and sprinkled blood and heat at the border, guarding the border for the Han emperors of the past. And the Mo family credited knife man is the Mr. Zheng, who has always concealed his identity. After that stormy night, the two sides had an open and honest conversation, and Su Mao was able to keep the long scorpion in the end, Mr. Zheng. I also wish Su Mao could one day become a hunter envoy of Dai. If you can't be a hero by judging the situation, you have to retreat to the next best thing, when the hero that came into being and took advantage of the trend. This unpredictable and secretive Mr. Zheng claims to be a messenger, and wherever there is food he will go to beg for food. Li Baozhen continued to whisper in his heart, "I'm not the same as you. I'm like Dong Shuijing from my hometown. I'm also a person on credit card. I just walk in different veins and do business in different ways. Well water doesn't offend river water." Su Mao asked, "My patience is limited, so I can trouble Li Jizao to speak openly. I would like to ask brother Su Mao to help each other in the same boat. Forget it, I will simply put it in a nasty way. I implore brother Su Mao to be with me, to be precise, with us being the cormorant and working together to catch a fish that slipped through the net." Li Baozhen said, "After the event is over, I can guarantee that brother Su Mao was an extremely human minister before his death, and he will be extremely sad and honored after his death, and he can find another way out, such as becoming one of the mountain heroes who are respected in Aquarius. To be a certain Dali high mountain god, or to be the 5 sacred mountain monarch of the Shihao kingdom, depends only on brother Su Mao's own meaning." After Li Baozhen dropped the stone in his hand, he clapped his hands. "A hero is in his old age and he is very ambitious? How can this be enough? It is far from enough." Su Mao pointed his finger at the night and said calmly, "The world is on horseback and the moon is full of thousands of states in the world." Li Baozhen sighed softly, "Just as if I haven't been here tonight." Because this is Su Mao's answer. Whether Shihaguo's Hungli Fu poetry Lang Su Mao, or the Yuzhou General Chao Wu of the Dali frontier army, is a martial artist, both life and death are on horseback and on the battlefield. The Middle-earth Confucian Temple is a secret place in Gongdalan. A prisoner, sitting by the lake, made a nest with the leaves and corn. The man guards a fishing path in order to disperse the bait and atomize it, so he throws and raises the rod again and again, all of which are empty. Today came the boy again. Lucha never asked the other person's name, and didn't care about why a Confucian disciple who was in the lower 5 realms could come here. Lucha didn't bother to explain anything. At first glance, the young man was an out-and-out layman. The boy asked curiously, "I heard that to catch different fish you need to use different fishing rods." Lucha smiled and said, "The master has a pole and the layman sets up a street stall." The boy nodded, "It's what the master said when I hear it." The barren world dragging down the river. Fei Fei began to retreat. Then came a group of monks from outside. It seemed that an appointment had been made. On the same day I came to Yiluo and came to see Bai Zhe. It's like a compelling audience. One of them was very eye-catching, youthful, thin, wearing an old fur, with 2 blushes on his cheeks, and he looked very lively and angry. The young man's voice was crisp and he said openly, "Master Bai, discuss something with you." It turned out to be a girl who looked like a teenager. Bai Zhe smiled and said, "Talk about it." She rarely showed a somewhat twisted look and said, "I plan to take a trip to the vast world and I will not take the initiative to cause trouble, but from the great wall of sword chi whoever dares to stop I will hack to death and treat me as a wild world." I tried my best but I couldn't cut it. I was beaten, caught and killed. I thought I was inferior. But if I went to a certain continent in the Howran world such as Aquarius, I wouldn't. It's going to be messy. Anyway, that's what I mean. Master Bai, you are so smart, you must know what I mean. Bai Zhe smiled and said, "Is it going to find him?" She grinned, a smiling face as bright as the sun. Bai Zhe said, "Then let's make an agreement. Whenever I fight with Li Sheng, you will find a chance to return to the wilderness. Therefore you must find a way out for yourself in advance even if you lose it. Half-life you have to return to the barren world. Before that I can say hello to the saints. You only need to make sure that you will not be an enemy to the barbarians in the future, nor do you want to go to the wild world. Presumably the problem is not big." She was obviously surprised. "Really?" She just said it casually. After saying hello to Bai Zhe she was going to leave. She didn't expect Bai Zhe to speak so well. It seemed that he called Master Bai respectfully, and definitely didn't shout in vain. It's such a girl, she is the most top-notch among the ancient monster clan swordsmanship, possessing a lot of road names, white scenery, chaotic halo, location, Yaoling. Bai Zhe smiled warmly and said softly, "It seems that I really like it. I'm not sure if I like it, but that guy avoids me and hasn't succeeded." Bai Jing was a little embarrassed. "By the way, Master Bai, now my name is Xiego. This new name, how is it? Is it a good fit?" Bai Zhe gave a hum and nodded. "I'm not good at naming." Fortunately, Bai Jing said, "The other ancient great monsters who woke up from their long sleep. One by one, Dao Xn trembled, shocked, and their faces were not very good looking. A person who can make Jianxiu Bai Jing reverently call Master Bai, even if it is a scene, he must be qualified to make Bai Jing bow his head and subdue softly." Bai Zhe smiled and said, "If you guessed correctly, you, including Bai Jing, have discussed in advance to see if you can get together and make a covenant with me, such as persuading me to leave you alone. It's almost enough?" Bai Jing laughed and said, "Master Bai, but now I regret it and stand on Master Bai's side. They are all named Bai, one family." One by one, staring at Bai Jing, a traitor who turned his back on his head, "This is a wild world. There is not a single 14th realm leader, just relying on the large number on my side. It doesn't make much sense." Bai Zhe squinted his eyes and said, "It is reasonable and reasonable, not as an example." Where did Bai Jing care about the life and death of the allies? He just muttered happily, "Xiaomo Xiaomo." The name was taken with sincerity. Lin Jingqing was alone at the logging yard. As in the small town of the past, Lin Jingqing saw many things in his eyes, such as Zhu Lu, who always liked to complain about herself when she was a young girl. He is still kept in the dark and does not know his true origin. She has always felt that the achievements of the group of peers back then, their birth and talent, luck and fate, accounted for a lot of factors such as Yu Lu's status as a subjugated prince, and Qin Pingan was because they met Ning Yao. Wei Bo, the master of the land of Kaidenshan, was lucky enough to become a disciple of Wensheng's lineage, and only then had a series of chance experiences. In fact, there is an idiom that is not widely circulated in the world of Qingming, called Zhu Chen Zhihao. In addition, there is a relatively uncommon saying that Zhu and Chen's family will never contradict each other. Because Zhu Lu is quite good in terms of her origin. It can even be said that among the younger generation in the town, as long as Ruan Xiu, Li Lu and Li Shixing are not discussed, she is a well-deserved leader, even better than Xia Ling and Tao Yalane and Hu Feng from Shisher shop are better, because Zhu Lu belongs to half of the outsiders of Lizhu Dongtian. As for the chance, it was also given to her. Before Lu Qing came here as a guest, he revealed more secrets to Lin Jingqing. It turns out that Zhu Lu's predecessor was from the ancient battlefield in the Qingming world, Yuzhou Zhulu County. Therefore, she is neither the heart is higher than the sky and the fate is thinner than the paper, nor is it the fate of a young lady. Even her name has a lot of background. It is a bit similar to Li Baoping from Fulu Street to Beipingzu, and the person who gave the name Zhulu comes from a certain Taoist in Baiyujing. Even Yudo is quite courteous women's crown. Because she is Baiyujing, or the protector of the town arranged by Lu Qin for the big brother. Of course it may be just one. After all, there will be a secret protector next to Zhou Li, the Taoist priest. More Lu Chen didn't say anything. But even if it is only one of the three, Lu Chen's respect for the master teacher is enough to see that Zhu Lu's life and talents are so good that Lu Chen deliberately shielded the heavens for Zhu Lu, who entered the Lizhu cave a few years in advance. Lin Jingqing listened to the three palms teaching the gods and gods over there, and said with a heartbreak, "Zhu and Chen's family, Zhu Yuchen must be respectful." Lin Jingqing understood the meaning of this sentence. Because Li Shixing was supposed to be Qin, Zhu Lu, as a key chess piece that Bai Yujing sent to Haoran at a high cost, also served as the guardian of Li Shixing on the climbing path. Taoist, Zhu Lu's respect for Li Shixing is the meaning of the question. There is another sentence: a man meets a boy with a friend, a man meets a woman with a marriage, and it is good to get married and never deviate. Lin Jingqing had strange eyes at the time. Lu Chen grinned and laughed at himself, making a mess of mandarin ducks. In the past, I didn't want to match the future young brother by Yujing's forehead teacher Luolong. Because Li Shixing occupies part of the Chen family's luck in the small town, the appearance of Zhu Lu was supposed to be both a debt repayment and a flower and fruit cause, similar to what the Buddhism said, fruit. To say that Zhu meets Qin must be respectful, it was originally applicable to Zhu Lu and Qin Pingan in Ni Ping Alley. In addition, if Zhu Lu can protect Li Baoping all the way to the Great Sui dynasty, by the way, he will study at the Mountain Cliff Academy. In Beipingzu it will be a small merit. In the future, the Sanjiao patriarch will go out and wait for her to return to her hometown of Qingming. There must be another reward falling from the sky. In short, Bai Yujing will never let her go to a foreign land in vain. If Zhu Lu's life journey could go to this point step by step, it could have been a good talk on the mountain. It's just that the opportunity is available and can't be grasped, so he has to not talk, and Lu Chen pretends that there is no such thing at all. Just like the direct disciple of the Lingbao city Pang Ding, at the highest point of Bai Yujing, the young Taoist officials at that time showed a kind of tenacity, but let Yudo and Lu Qinggao take a look. Sun Jiashu of the Old Dragon City missed a fortune that was equivalent to the whole Old Dragon City. Sun Jiashu did not become depressed by this, but realized a valuable truth that life is in the sky, and life is in oneself. Lin Jingqing also didn't bother to talk around with Lu Chen, and directly asked the other party how to deal with Zhu Lu. Do you just leave it alone to Zhu Lu, or plan to bring it back to the Qingming world one day? Lu Chen answered the question but only said a vague remark. There are many results in life, but there is no if. Lin Jingqing asked. Master Lu didn't plan to tell her the truth. Lu Chen shook his head. Let's talk about it later, it won't help to tell the truth now. Once things are looked at in the long run, right and wrong, good or bad, right and wrong, it will be a mess. Lin Jingqing wondered. Since Zhu Lu is so important, why should Master Lu let her go and watch Zhu Lu head towards a fork in the road that does not match expectations? When the secret letter sent by Li Baozhen to Zhu Lu was a critical turning point. There was no precaution before it happened. During those years when Lu Chen set up a stall, he had never met Zhu Lu. It seemed that he deliberately did not examine Zhu Lu's character, not to carve a piece of dusty jade, and Lu Chen did not have anything in the storm in Red Candle Town. Measures to remedy the situation. According to Lu Chen's Taoism, it is not impossible to calculate. Just talk about Zhu Lu's martial arts. If Lu Chen wants to give some pointers, Zhu Lu's first 3 martial arts would never be so bumpy. Because according to the national master Cui Yang's guess, one of the top 10 martial arts masters in the Qingming world, a clone of Lu Chen, will inevitably occupy a place. It's just a fork in the road that is not in line with the original intention of the poor road, but it may be the right path for Zhu Lu in this life. How should such a thing in this principle be counted? Lu Chen smiled and said, a person who cultivates the Tao, how many times he has come to this world, whether he is resuscitated or not, in the final analysis, he still has to blame himself, and he needs to ask for more blessings. It seems that looking forward 10,000 years is inevitable. It seems that 10,000 years later, it is all accidental. The reason can be the spring festival couplets and the word blessing that are changed every year, a spring breeze and drizzle that comes and goes quietly, the winter snow that will always melt away, the water that is gone forever, and another seam patch. The old house in Yin is a new house that seems to be demolished and rebuilt, but still retains the foundation. It can also be the small towns and alleys of Lizhu Cave. If you like the gateway, you will visit the door, the house where you have quarreled, and you will detour if you don't like it. It's the grain shop, cloth shop, wine shop, funeral shop, and wedding shop, the bluestone slabs of Fulu Street in Taoye Lane, or the Huangyi Road of Xinghua Lane. It can even be chicken dung on the table, the dog dung on the corner of the house, a dusty wine glass, the dripping traces in the alley year after year, a pair of people who are too lazy to clean it every time they eat, the green bamboo chopsticks that I wiped under my armpit. But the truth will only be the scorching sun that exposes the backs of the poor in the summer. It is the burning sight of everyone when they look up at the sun. There are thousands of reasons and thousands of reasons for you, whether you understand the truth or not, you have to bear it. There is a vernacular in the small town which is often spoken by older people, who cannot see clearly and is deaf. He is already a bodhisattva. On the surface, this is a sentence full of self-deprecating words. People are about to die and they are about to be wood. It is almost like a clay sculpture and wood carving of the bodhisattva. But if you look deeper, this is a very meaningful statement, but when the old saying is passed on for too long, it is too passed on from generation to generation. Young people are no longer serious, even if they have heard it, even the old people who say such things, it's just a joke that is slightly sad or completely open. I am afraid that the disappearance of a local dialect is the death of a hometown, just like the death of an old man. At the entrance of a dragon kiln in the small town in the past, there was a master who was always clean after work, and an apprentice kiln worker who was next to charcoal, clay and kiln fire all year round. Then at the head of the Great Wall of xianxia, a gentleman and 2 students. Mr. Drinking took the lead in talking, and 2 proud students, Chui Dongshan and Chao Sunny, sang a harmony. The bead in the clothes of the poor boy is a good one. I will not seek for myself but count other treasures. Counting other treasures will be useless. Please listen to me. The dirt is not stained, it is self-evident, and you can't help but grow up from the heart, and you will sound like a lion when you speak. The lions cried in Mud Bottle Alley. Sword of Coming Chapter 954. Qingming World, the border between Yongzhou and Peizhou. The 2 sisters walked in the courtyard and climbed side by side. The face of the women's crown was vague and unsteady, like clouds and water. A xuanhuan robe, thousands of immortal mountains. It is one of the few great monks in the 14 realms who participated in the last riverside discussion in Wuzhou. She was followed by a charming young woman with a crown of emperor and wearing a yellow dragon robe. It was Zhu Xian, the current son of the Yufu dynasty in Yongzhou. In the Qingming world, it is very common for women to ascend to the throne and inherit orthodoxy. A purple swallow rested on Zhu Xian's shoulder, surrounded by a golden swimming fish that was indeterminate and true, and 2 genuine dragon's whiskers had grown. Goldfish among scale worms and purple swallow among feather worms have always been regarded as species gods. Therefore, these 2 types of spiritual objects are relatively easy to form and form. It is rumored that the 2 sides can go to the high places of the road. Real dragon, the latter can be reborn as the legendary Suzaku. The former is fairly numerous but the latter is a handful. Both parties climbed together. It's just this mountain, but it's a mountain range at the bottom of Dada water. There is no bottom in the mighty Qingming, the sun and the moon shining on the gold and silver platform. The mountain shrines and temples were actually built under the water, which is also a unique sight in the Qingming world. Feigalu Dan Cloud Steaming Xiaowei. The top of the mountain, because the mountain is slightly sunken like a basin, has the common name of wash basin, and one of the mountain shrines and temples has the nickname of a dressing table. It seems that Sun Huaizhong once traveled here, and the 2 theories first given by the old master of Shendu Guan soon spread widely in several states. This old master is simply a landscape mansion that walks under the sky. Wu Zhou asked with a smile, I heard that Lao Sen Lu promised you that he would bring a chief worship to your Yufu dynasty? Zhu Xian nodded and said, so the position has been vacant these years. This time Master Lu returned to Bai Yujing, I should give me an explanation. Anyway, give me an approximate number of years. Otherwise, it would not be a problem that it would be so delayed. It seems that anyone who is familiar with Lu Qin can't compare the identity and realm of the 3rd master of Bai Yujing. Wu Zhou smiled and said, Yongzhou, are you going to have a second true dragon? In the awe-inspiring world there is already the true dragon King Zhu. The Qingming world is a pattern of 9 mountains and 1 river. The richness of water transport is far from comparable to that of Hauran. It is indeed difficult to produce a true dragon and also difficult to raise. Because of the battle of ascent to the sky, the dragons who practiced the Taoism were almost all left in the vast world with the 4 seas, and the 4 seas dragon palace, Dadu, rivers, lakes and lakes were opened up, countless and responsible. Clouds and rain. Zhu Xian said, don't dare to make this extravagant hope. Wu Zhou reminded, it is possible to fight for the Qigu again. After he breaks the border, the gift of martial arts is nothing. The main thing is the rice thief King Yuanlu. The road is promising. If you succeed in winning the Qigu, with his friendship with Wang Yuanlu cannot be said to be a good deal of buy one get one free. It can be seen that Qigu and Wang Yuanlu are both very nostalgic people. If Qigu served as the royal worship of Yufu Zhu's family, followed by Wang Yuanlu, as a master of 10 jungles somewhere in the territory for the thriving Yufu dynasty, it would be equivalent to 2 big aids. Zhu Xian frowned. It's just that she was vague and she was clearly moved, but she still refused to nod her head. She gave a correct sentence, saying that she wanted to return to her hometown of Wuling County first. Compared with the Qingxin dynasty in Bingzhou, whether it is national strength or the top combat power of the Taoist officials, Yufu Zhu is still a big difference. After all, Yongzhou is only a small state with a weak foundation, which is a bit similar to the treasure of the world. Pingzhou, many things are really doing dojos and snail shells. Fortunately, the Taiyin patriarch next to him returned to his homeland. In this way, Yongzhou would be equivalent to having a 14th level monk sitting in the mountains and rivers. The reason why Wuzhou favors the Yufu dynasty so much is that it was once her place of cultivation, but it has long since become a relic. Moreover, the first fairy soldier she refined is now the treasure of the Yufu dynasty. Wuzhou gifted Yufu to the founding emperor of the Zhu family. That magnificent man was once a half-Taoist companion in our continent. In the end, Wuzhou is optimistic about Zhu Xian's achievements in the Great Road. 100 years old, she is already an immortal. Give Zhu Xian another 400 to 500 years and give her another great opportunity. The extremely high-flying dragon, one person, one dragon, and at the same time proving that the national power of the Yufu dynasty at that time is worth looking forward to, so Wuzhou is willing to reopen the dojo site in Yongzhou. A Qi trainer who has entered the 14th realm in the legend, becomes a person of Taoism, and the next path of cultivation will become very embarrassing and boring. Wuzhou smiled and said, "It's human actions." Zhu Xian nodded, "Follow the fate of everyone." Wuzhou said casually, "If I change it to you, I will simply visit the Qingxin dynasty with them and go to the Azure God dynasty with them. It's a trip to relax." Zhu Xian said helplessly, "I have this idea, but it's a pity that I can't get out of it. The major event of the country lies in the sacrifice in the army. Yongzhou has a small territory and the Yufu Zhu family is unique, so after Zhu Xian ascended the throne, there were very few wars and battles, but the sacrifice of Zhaijiao is really an important matter of exhaustion and effort, because there are many types of sacrifices and complicated rituals. Not only the burnt and sacrifice of heaven and earth, the sinking of water offerings, the hanging of offering sacrifices to mountain gods, etc. Gods, humans, ghosts, and earth as well as many mountain gods, all need to be respected. In addition, there are still every few years. There are 2 rituals of gold and jade each. Zhu Xian belongs to the ruler of a country with relatively low qualifications and cannot give these things to outsiders for the time being. Therefore, she has at least 3 months throughout the year and is not in the ritual ceremony. It's on the way to the Zhaijiao sacrifices, especially the entire Yufu dynasty recently. It's preparing for a great glutinous ritual that has not met all over the world in a century. There are as many as 3,600 divine thrones. The Taoist officials of Gaogong and the abbots of Taoist temples of various veins came to the capital to participate in the grand event. They all needed the female emperor Zhu Xian, who was the priest, to do it herself, so she couldn't get away from it. Fortunately, the first emperor only surrendered the throne to her after she entered the fairyland. Wuzhou joked, "Your fish talisman lacks a foot to allow the monarch to govern and look elegant." Yaxiang Yao Qing is indeed the auxiliary minister that any emperor dreams of. Approaching the top of the mountain, Wuzhou suddenly stopped, squinted at the sky, and through the dadu water curtain, her sight extended all the way to the highest point in the north. Wuzhou said something similar to astronomical terminology for no reason. The Big Dipper armillary sphere can be found in the beginning and end of the incident. As a Taoist official, especially the prince of a country, often abbots make sacrifices. Of course, Zhu Xian will not feel unfamiliar. Following the line of sight of our continent, she looks at the rumored place that is much dimmer compared to the stars 10,000 years ago. Ziwei. Ziwei is close to the Big Horn, and the emperor is right on the ground. The sky and the city are in the middle with a pairing line hanging down. Ziwei is located in the center of the northern sky, with the North Pole as its center. Because the gods revolve, the universe and the yin and yang open and close, rumors were once in this palace, hence the name Purple Palace. Wuzhou continued to move higher and smiled. 2 Jingshan Dachao sect, plus the vassal hills set up by the 2 sects, are linked together and a certain person is added. It is a coincidence, the most coincidentally, of course, it is the kind of match made in heaven as if the gods make beauty. Astronomical portrait. Xiaogu the girl played a big game of chess. Zhu Xian's heart moved slightly and frowned. That's why Su Jun only had to die last time? It's similar to becoming as a ghost? Is it possible that these are the layouts of Xiaoga and Liangjingxian? Wu Zhou smiled and said, maybe Xiaoga had premeditated, maybe she made a mistake, and more likely she saw a chance that she could take advantage of the situation during her retreat. Maybe she was the opportunity for harmony is not in yourself, but in a certain time. It is just speculation. I'm not good at fortune-telling. Next time you meet that Master Lu, you can ask him by yourself. Has always been proficient in this way. If you leave the process aside and just look at the result, Qi and Huang are connected to the two domains and you are happy. The Dachao sect and Liangjingxian, who were originally a pair of mortal enemies, abandon the previous suspicions and sincerely cooperate with each other. Of course, it is a win-win situation. Then Su Jun is the leader of the two sects and it is a great advantage. The Purple Palace is harmonious and upright, then to the phoenix, chanting. It was the marriage, it was the Xiaoga of the ancestor of the two Jingshan women, and Su Jun became a Taoist couple, and the Xiaoga of the women's championship would never be in vain. Zigong Xingxing is Jichang with strong internal support. Of course, it is said that the current Liangjingxian and Daqiazong are unstoppable after they are closed. Then once the Zigong Qi is straight, it is the emperor who will lead the soldiers himself, and then the Zigong will open up. It is the situation of the world soldiers rising. Wu Zhou said, we cultivators, apart from breaking the realm, there are still many things that can be done, especially if our practice runs into a wall and cannot break a certain bottleneck. We always find something to do, just like me this time I came out of the mountain, did not come here too. A family of 3 religions, Confucianism, Buddhism and Taoism plus a military strategist, the ancestors of the 3 religions strayed from Taoism. From the wild world invaded the Howran world, and then to the Howran world's counterattack against the wild, in contrast to the current 14 states of Qingming. Is it not chaotic? Maybe a little spark, maybe it is a wildfire. The war that sweeps the world, no matter who fights, no matter who loses or wins, who wins in the end? Naturally, outside the ancestral court of the military strategist, that small group of certain Taoist scholars hiding behind the scenes, sit back and enjoy their achievements and steal their luck. As a matter of fact, there is an invisible battle between tactics. Therefore, the sages of the Chinese and Turkish Confucian temple used flawless accomplishments as the reason to change the order of the 72nd generals of the Wu temple to accompany the gods. It was by no means a simple book business spirit, but a profound significance. If Zhomi this guy must have a backhand in the world, then there are several possibilities to help the Zhomi who has gone to the sky, echoing from top to bottom and from inside to outside. For example, Zhomi once left a concealed clone in the world. It was either a sword repairman who promised a chance to be in the 14th realm of pure sword repair in the future, or a soldier monk who was able to fish in troubled waters, and then all other possibilities. After all, thoughtful thoughts most people really can't guess. It's just the sword repairing journey that benefits the most, but the risk is the greatest because Howran is missing one of the most proud people in the world, but there is an extra Bai Yi who is already a sword repairer in the Xuandu view of the Qingming world. So what? It is equivalent to sitting off the river twice and blocking the way carefully by one's own efforts. Zhu Xian asked sincerely, can I do something for seniors? Wu Zhou laughed blankly. Zhu Xian knew he had made a mistake. She can do it, how can our continent not be able to do it? Wu Zhou smiled and squeezed Zhu Xian's cheek and said, good intentions. Zhu Xian hesitated to speak but stopped. Wu Zhou shook his head and said, you won't give the broken array and I won't want it either. Previously, Zhu Xian recruited Qi Gu to serve as the consecration. She gave the condition that this magic weapon was taken out of the royal secret library and temporarily loaned to Qi Gu for a period of 300 years. In fact, this divine soldier was once a token of love, and it was the founding emperor who personally gave to the Yufu dynasty in the early years of Wu Zhou. My continent needs to collect magical soldiers to continue to unite, the more the better, but this is the only thing my continent has no idea. Today the Qingming world is recorded and documented, including the broken array. There are a total of 18 relics of the gods. They are all hard-won and rare things. Only a handful of soldiers were left in the Qingming world in the battle of ascending to the sky. The ruins and the corpses of the gods are turned into the land of stars, excavated, or fished from the broken secret realm of the long river of time. Among them, the 2 with the highest rank, one treasured in Baiyujing Biyun Tower, is an ancient armor that has been banned for thousands of years. The other one is on Wuzhou, or she is herself, because to be precise, this thing is already part of her harmony. When she was young, she obtained a part of her life's magical powers, one of the ancient 12 high-ranking gods, the caster, by chance. The semi-celestial soldiers cast and exercised by our own hands have long surpassed the number of hands. They were only checked by the monks at the top of the Qingming Tianxia mountain. As for the number of fairy soldiers, except for our own knowledge of the specific number, the outside world can only guess wildly. Therefore Wuzhou is well deserved as the number 1 master in the world. At the wedding banquet of Su Jun and Chao Gu, Wuzhou and Yudou had a heartfelt question at the main table, but they were rejected directly by the other party. The conditions given by Wuzhou are not insincere. As long as Biyun Tower takes out the armor and hands it to her for refining, then she can help Bai Yujing solve a hidden danger in the future, as to which state the hidden danger is, or Bai Yujing decides on someone. As long as she gives a message, she will help settle the situation, willing to do anything at all costs. But the second son of Dao was not moved at all. Mostly it will be a gift to the disciple of the Taoist Guanmen of that Taoist named Shanqing, who will be the lord of a certain city or a certain building in the future. After the 15 well-documented soldiers, among them was the saber of Sui Chu Gong Wu Shuangjiang, and one of the relics of the ancient execution platform. It's not too surprising that there is no fruit on Yudou's side. Bai Yujing's family has a lot of business and Da's second child is so temperamental, but Wuzhou frowns slightly. It's quite reasonable. Why is it so urinary on the other side of the palace? A narrow knife is not considered too high, but Wu Shuangjiang doesn't use it himself. Why he doesn't want to nod? Are you going to eat ashes in the Sui Chu Gong? Wuzhou previously went to the Crane Tower in secret, and also gave a deal that he believed to be extremely sincere, but he never thought it would be lost. There have been some road deductions in Wuzhou, but they have not been able to bypass Wu Shuangjiang, and the other party is obviously blocking the way deliberately. After all, the calculation is one way. Wuzhou believes that he is not proficient, and can only be regarded as an introductory one. The biggest weird thing about this kind of magic weapon is that the Qi practitioner wants to refine it. It can be described as a lot of hardships. The most typical example is the 4 fairy swords that bred birth spirits. Even if the Taoism is as good as a fight, it can only be made to recognize the master, but it is still unable to be refined into a life thing. Fortunately, the Qi trainer succeeded in a certain magic weapon. The cultivation level is not high enough, or the Dao heart is not strong enough. It is easy to change the mind and nature. Following the magical power of that magic weapon, subtle changes will occur, and in the end it will be like being occupied by a magpie's nest, causing catastrophes ranging from harm to the fundamentals of the great Tao. On the other hand, getting into trouble, losing the mind, changing the temperament, and going to an extreme such as becoming extremely murderous and uncontrollable. In the history of Qingming, there were nearly 20 incidents of disasters that had no warning signs, just by Bai Yujing's clear records. But the strangest thing is that if it is succeeded by a pure wufu, it will be like a tiger. It will be very easy to use. There are almost no sequelae. It can even temper the body. It is a bit like the natural complement of the flying sword of the natal sword and the sword repair. Ruzhou Linjiangxian Runyue Peak has worked hard. Bingzhou Women's National Teacher, White Lotus Root. These 3 boundless martial artists, the top 3 masters of martial arts in the world, have just one magic weapon. Jiang Zhaoma in the Ziki Tower also seemed to have a ranking-class magic weapon, which belonged to his predecessor. On the other hand, the training of airmen holding the magic weapon in hand all need to be careful. There used to be a great monk in the ascending realm who almost held a divine weapon and completely opened the barrier of the outer sky, which was enough to be a passage for the outer world demon to come to the blue underworld. Yudou left Bai Yujing and traveled far away with a sword, almost cutting off the head of the great monk. It was the master who personally stopped the 2 sides, filled the holes, and then brought the old monk back to Bai Yujing Verdant City, followed the master for hundreds of years, and finally recovered a clear Taoist heart, and later became a god. Lord of Xiaoqing. The head teacher Ko Ming once served as Hangeling. In the early days when Taoist ancestors rode oxen to pass the customs, Ko Minji watched the stars and discovered the secret of heaven. According to legend, the Taoist ancestor taught 5,000 words, and Ko Ming annotated as Shi Xing Jing, which is highly regarded by the Loguan school and respected as the first sutra. Wuzhou smiled and said, "It is possible to go to the wild world. Over there is an old immortal who just woke up not long ago. By coincidence, he had a potential dispute with me." Wuzhou took out a lotus leaf cup, and the wine overflowed by herself, and the wine was scented. She was not busy drinking, just twisted it lightly, slightly sad, and laughed at herself. Looking back at the deceased, you can reminisce about the old. Very few. The former city lord of Xinxiao City, that is, the old monk who almost made a big mistake, his real name is Yaokajio and his Dao name is Nigu. He used to be a senior official of Baiyujing with the Gaogu people of Daifishan Mountain. And Xinxiao City and Zuandugwan both have a peach forest. Yaokajio is also one of the few Baiyujing Taoist officials who can be friends with Xiandu Guansan Huaizhong. Yaokajio was not born as a direct descendant of Baiyujing, but was halfway transferred to Baiyujing. Made a big mistake. If it hadn't been for the great leader Ko Ming to stop him, he would have already died under Yu Dojian, and there would be no chance to correct his mistakes. Ko Ming brought the devious Yaokajio back to the dojo of Verdant City. Later, Yaokajio became the lord of Xinxiao City. In fact, he criticized him. Because he couldn't believe in Yaokajio, or he couldn't believe in the Dao heart of the ascended monk, and even guessed that the Baiyujing city lord Tianxian with the Dao name, imitated ancient, was actually no different from the Huawei Tianma, but was suppressed by the help of the great headmaster. Therefore, many Baiyujing Taoist officials have had a bad impression of the entire Xinxiao city for so many years, and they have been watching with cold eyes, as if they were waiting for Yaokajio to make another mistake. The veteran Taoist slowly accumulated merits, and finally paid off the debt on Baiyujing's book that only 3 head teachers could read. A one-off write-off. That day the old Taoist priest left Baiyujing alone to go to a wine shop in the faraway hometown. He invited himself to drink and drink. It's like a common citizen who has worked hard to pay off debts for many years, and has no debts and can finally drink alcohol happily. The comfort after the sadness is not enough for outsiders. The old man drank the bad wine in the market, like a fish in the water, and wandered freely. It seems that it has never been so easy since the cultivation of the Taoism. Outside the wine shop, there was heavy rain, and the old Taoist was drinking while turning his head and looking out like watching the rain. Go straight ahead and all evils will breathe. The old man looked happy, repeating the 2 words silently, heart and soul. 3 people successively walked into the shop from the rain curtain and sat down at the same table with the old Taoist priest to have a drink. One is Sun Huaizhong, the other is Lu Qin, and the other is Gao Gu. The 3 of them didn't say hello beforehand, and they all agreed. It just happened to be full of a wine table. Probably a cultivator does not only practice things. In the end, Yaokajio chose to go to the Great Wall of Jianghu and was one of the 3 saints who sat in the sky. Failed to come back. Maybe he didn't even think about coming back. Traveling away from home alone is like a move empty-handed, only moving away the entire hometown in the heart. Wu Zhou and Zhu Xian, the 2 walked to the wash basin on the top of the mountain, and saw that there was a small single-hole stone arch bridge over the stream. On the opposite side of the bridge is the mountain shrine closely guarded by the Yufu dynasty. The specifications are extremely high. The roof ridge is covered with jasper glazed tiles. If it can arrest the clouds and mist, it looks like snow. It is spread on the roof, but it flows slowly. Zhumen Hihi, the 2 gates, like a place where the bright sunlight condenses and never disperses, but also decorated with danju. The situation is majestic, the roots of the mountains are stable, the temples control the waters of thousands of miles, and the great blasphemy, the life and death of the spirits. The temple gods are always in charge of the misfortune and blessings of the 4 directions. There is an ancient camphor tree next to the temple, which is very strange. It is 10 feet high and surrounded by ancient trees. It is surrounded by the sun and the moon. Wu Zhou raised his head and glanced at the camphor tree, sighed faintly, and when he came back he was old. Both people and trees are. This tree is extremely famous in the Qingming world, because it is said that although this 10,000-year-old camphor tree has not been able to nurture wisdom, it doesminates the 4 states' luck, and it can account for the good and bad luck of the 4 states. The camphor tree has 4 branches, each of which is responsible for the fortunes of the states and nations. If 4 guardians of the magicians hold an axe to chop the branches, if the twigs come back to life, the state will be blessed. If the branches have not been healed for many years, they will not be able to restore their original appearance. The predecessor of the state is sick, which means that there are hidden dangers in the mountains and rivers of a state. Then the monarchs of various countries can issue edicts, but if the branch cannot regenerate over the years, the state will perish. This time the Yufu dynasty took Zhu Xian, the lord of the country, as the main priest, and held a Taoist glutinous rice dumpling of the highest standard. In fact, it is tantamount to a guan bao. Successfully holding this glutinous rice dumpling can justly help. The Yufu dynasty in Yongzhou, and even the 4 states of the world inspected fortunes and disasters. Although the mountains and temples belong to the Yufu dynasty, it is reasonable to say that the outside world could not tell how Yufu wanted to dispose of the old camphor tree, but in fact the first emperor of Yufu had been in power for 500 years. In addition to the 300 years of the presidency of the monarch, for a full 800 years, there has not been a Puqian gluttony. Two key reasons, one inside and one outside. The former is that the two emperors of the Yufu clan recognize their virtues. Uncoordinated, I dare not easily divulge the secret of heaven, because it is not sacrificed but sacrificed. The latter, the so-called external pressure, is of course that Yufu needs to look at Bai Yujing's face. Wu Zhou asked, "How many branches do you plan to cut?" "It's no problem to cut only one branch of the old camphor tree. Anyway, if it is a blessing or a curse, it is regarded as a fish. The wounds are not healed. How do you let the emperors and monarchs of over 100 countries in Peijo deal with themselves? Are you really going to the next edict? But is the problem really just a trivial matter? In case if one is not careful, the worst result occurs. The Taoist officials in Peijo, shouldn't they be furious? Everyone is in danger and the undercurrent is surging. Maybe there is nothing to do, but something has to be done abruptly. Zhu Xin's eyes resolutely said, "Chop and chop 4 branches." Wu Zhou took the lead on the stone bridge, leaned against the bridge rail, drank a glass of wine slowly, and glanced at the young woman walking beside her. She was a big beauty, naturally charming. It just seems to be a flowery attitude, but in fact it is a spirit. It's really like me when I was young. There are no taboos. You should know that in the previous Riverside meeting among the 14 realm great monks, Wu Zhou was the first to propose to go outside the sky to do a thorough job. The top combat power of the Qingming world, from ancient times to the present, has never been suspected of the prosperity of the sun and the decline of the yin. Except for Wu Zhou with the road named Taiyin, her appearance this time has verified the speculation that the outside world has speculated that she has already been among the 14th realms. Bai Yujing's first deputy city lord of the South China City has always been honored as Mrs. Wei, with the Taoist name Zixu, and the first woman Yuanjun in the Qingming world. There is also the female crown of Xuanhuan who has been in retreat for a long time, and the grandson of the Taoist name Empty Mountain. She is the well-deserved Taoist sword immortal leader before the rise of Sun Huaizhong of the same school. The ancestor of the founder of Liangjingxian, the Song of Fu Zhen. In addition to the top 10 martial arts in the world, in addition to Bai O, there are 2 female martial arts, but the ranking and deeds of martial arts are not as high and prominent as Bai O, one of them. After Bai O was among the top 10, she would deliberately bypass the female martial artist every time she asked someone to ask her boxing. Wu Zhou held the lotus leaf cup and twisted it gently. She squinted to look at the temple. If my continent is not wrong, one of the thrilling co-cutting in the past is now in this temple. Sword of Coming Chapter 955. Located in Mizhou, the northernmost part of the Qingming world, there is a lonely mountain top that rises above the plains, called Runyue Peak, and there is a weak water at the foot of the mountain. The mountain is steep, the stones are like jade, the rows of pine are like green, but the aura is thin. Obviously it is not a good geomantic place suitable for opening up a dojo. The mountain and water restriction of this Runyue Peak is the share of Wufu's hard work. It's like a mountaintop lake, the fist is like flowing water pouring over the mountain, but it can't hurt the life in the mountain at all. Wufu is not an end, and monks are not ascending, so there is no need to expect to reach the top. Don't wait for guess. There are more than a dozen pure martial artists from various states. They have different levels of martial arts. They find places to practice on the banks of weak waters at the foot of the mountain. They regard mountain climbing as the best way to practice boxing. The hard work of being the owner of Runyue Peak never drove people. Today there was a visitor from Runyue Peak, a scholar with a green shirt, with sword eyebrows in his temples, very bookish. Seeing the figure of this person, there are constantly silhouettes of rabbits rising and falling, all of whom are long famous masters of martial arts, rushing to this place, wanting to pay tribute to this famous master of the forest. As a result, they were tens of feet or more than 100 feet away from the man, and they could no longer move forward half a step. It was like being cast a piece of anchoring talisman, allowing them to squeeze their feet, even punches trying to open the way with both fists. Still can't go half a step forward. Immediately afterwards, several people were weakened, and their bodies began to slip out, like the road of martial arts in the world. In order to stop their retreat, the Wufu stomped the ground vigorously like thunder, but unfortunately it was still doomed to be futile, plowing the ground, and his legs drew 2 cracks on the ground. Among them was a white-haired old man who was a martial artist at the top of the mountain. The registration number, I just want to be able to chat with the longest-lived pure martial artist in the history of Qingming. Wufu Lin Jiangxian. One of the 10 people in the Qingming world. 6th, the ranking is behind the thunderous Xuanhuan Sun's arms. But as long as the old master is away, every time he chats with people about Lin Jiangxian in the arena, he will say that he is ashamed when he meets people. Lin Jiangxian ignored those martial arts of all states who belong to the 3 realms of refining gods. There are no steps in the mountains, not even stone roads, only a winding dirt road leading to the top of the mountain, overgrown with weeds. At the top of Runyue Peak, someone lived alone in a grassy cottage. He was a thin young man with a beard, unshaven face and muddy eyes. The young man was sitting cross-legged on a boulder, rubbing an old bamboo flute. A pot of wine was placed at the feet, and a pile of pine nuts, simmered potato and poria slices that seemed to be used as a side dish. Seeing Lin Jiangxian, he did not speak hard but just nodded in greeting. Lin Jiangxian clasped his fists to give a gift, and did not explain his intention. Then he came to the huge boulder. With his hands folded, he looked at the weak gurgling water outside the mountain. According to legend, in the weak water, there were ancient immortals who used to refine it. The chain detained a green ape and a white snake that almost turned into a horned snake. After that, the 2 imprisoned animals under the water were similar to the mountain protection of Runyue Peak. It's just that these ghosts and wonders have never been verified by the monks. The green ape and the white snake are spreading falsehoods. The mountain wind is bitter. The lyncher, in the green shirt of the scribes, his sleeves are dangling. For some reason he has to work harder than Runyue Peak, which never goes down the mountain and gives people a sense of transcendence. There are no weeds in the mountains, so they are all treasures. There is a lot of haze here. He said hard and straightforwardly, I can't beat you, so I don't need to ask for a punch, I just give up. Such recognition is not like a pure taker at all, but it is the second in the world. Not long ago he punched the white lotus root that was halfway up the mountain and fell back to the foot of the mountain, falling into the weak water. Lin Jiangxian smiled and said, I don't come here for the sake of learning, just come here to enjoy the scenery and relax. This is the first time the 2 sides have met. In addition to the few thatched huts built with painstaking efforts on the top of the mountain, there is a pile of rocks of different sizes and strange shapes. Especially not far away from the cliff, there is a piece of stone, especially outstanding, more than 10,000 feet, and its shape is stable. The lower circle and the upper level, floating on top of the stone, the 4 red lacquer characters of Yanshou Daochang are engraved on bangshuya, and there is no signature. Lin Jiangxian took a few more glances, and if nothing happened, this would be the stepping stone that was privately hailed as the resting place of the Taoist ancestors. However, the fact that Daozu once came here to rest has not been widely spread in the Qingming world, and only speculated privately inside the Dazongmen. Before Dao ancestor came to Runyue Peak, the only thing Runyue Peak could tell was the ancient pines in the mountains and the strange cloud aura of this piece of pumice. Therefore there have always been legends of immortals and ghosts roaming on it. The reason why there have been no Qi practitioners to open up the dojo here in history is that this vision is just a fancy, a mountain without the aura of heaven and earth. To the Qi practitioners, it is a barren land and water without a source. Lin Jiangxian stood on the top of the mountain, his thoughts drifting away. Regardless of the moment, there stood a martial artist who reached the first level. According to a Shanshui Mansion News, Liangjing Shinchaoga and Dachao sect Su Jun, these couples of great ages and world-famous Taoists, have just visited Runyue Peak, but they did not stay on the top of the mountain for a long time, and soon after returning to Liangjingshan, it seemed that he was going to retreat. The Taoist guard was an outsider, Yao Qing, the elegant minister of the Qingshan dynasty. This shows that Chaoga is determined to win this retreat. Lin Jiangxian knows that the ascended female crown of the resurrected Taoist title was once a Chao Tian girl. As for the predecessor, it is a bit of a clue to catching the wind because Yashan Wufu, spies all over the world, originated from the setting of Yashan. There is a secret agency called Barnyard Lawsuit, which is responsible for collecting street talks and historical stories. She put away the bamboo flute hard, picked up a few pine nuts by the foot, threw it into her mouth and chewed slowly. Lin Jiangxian took out a wooden ink mold from his sleeve and tossed it lightly, returned to the original owner. By the way, I will pass on for my disciple again and apologize to you. It turned out that a young disciple of Lin Jiangxian was entangled by a young martial lunatic before. He had to apprentice a teacher. He had good aptitude, but his temperament was too frizzy. When the ghost retreated, he posed a problem for the young man. Come to Runyue Peak, whether you steal or ask, you must get back a brand new ink ingot as a gift of apprenticeship, and become a disciple of Lin Jiangxian. I am willing to drink the apprentice tea and formally accept apprentices. As a result, the young man gave a small surprise, did not retrieve the ink ingot, but brought down this wooden ink model that more reveals his hard work in martial arts. According to the disciple Lin Jiangxian, he exhausted his true energy and energy on the way to the mountain, fainted, and was rescued by hard work. He was allowed to recuperate on the side of the mountain. Give him an ink mold as a parting gift. Shaking his head hard, the ink model hovered in the air between the two and said, "Let him leave it as a memorial. If I didn't give it back then he wouldn't be able to steal it." Lin Jiangxian couldn't help being laughed at. This new disciple who had just started, turned out to be a little thief who hadn't told him and he could make good things. Previously on the side of Yashan, the young man said that he was a martial artist who had not seen him in 1,000 years. He also saw that he had great perseverance. The great master then developed a heart to cherish his talents and asked him if he would stay at Runyue Peak, as the great disciple of the mountain, but he didn't want to change his original intentions. He had already decided that master's candidate could be half-hearted, so he decided to go down the mountain. After hard work, I personally sent myself off to the foot of Runyue Peak. The two sides reluctantly said goodbye and became a year-end friendship. Runyufeng worked hard to practice martial arts, and his only hobby was to obtain local materials, cut down pine branches and make pine smoke and ink. From smelting cigarettes, carving ink molds, smelting with a plastic pestle and then polishing and tracing gold with ink, it is all hard work. There happens to be a herd of deer in the mountains, and the painstakingly refined Songyan ink is extremely well known in the Qingming world. It is most suitable for copying scriptures in small letters, as well as the beards and eyebrows and feathers of meticulous painting figures. It is rumored that Su Zi, the world's awe-inspiring world, once traveled here. He did not take a trip in vain. He received a set of colored inks given so hard, so he came up with the phrase, "I didn't dare to use hard ink." In fact, Su Zi was here. After returning to his hometown, he disassembled this set of ink ingots and presented them to several protégés who had reunited for a long time. This shows how much Su Zi cherishes this set of ink ingots. Before Lin Jiangxian visited Runyue Peak, he asked his disciples to search for a few ink ingots carved with 30,000 pestles and 100,000 pestles. Not long ago he also obtained a wooden ink mold. Of course, it is not that Lin Jiangxian likes arty, he can relying on the condensed level of the ink ingots and the knife skills of the ink molds to verify the general depth and precision of the hard work. It is not that Lin Jiangxian regards hard work as a threat to the world's first place, but just curiosity. The young martial artist who practiced boxing did not learn from others, and there was no one to help teach the boxing and feed the boxing. He didn't even have a decent boxing book. How could she be able to go all the way to the top of the martial arts on her own? It's hard climbing so fast. Seeing the hard work so polite, Lin Jiangxian retracted the ink mold into his sleeves as a reward for a peach, and smiled and reminded, "There may be room for leaks and fills in the juk acupoint. Yutong and Yanchuang are 4 inches away. This route is purely invigorating and rests on you. In fact, you need to do the opposite. It should be turbid and not light. In addition, there is a 3-yang meridian route. No matter how well you carve it, you can use it. It doesn't matter if you pass a fist, maybe you can get a few points faster." After thinking hard for a moment, he nodded and said, "See you, Master Lin." Lin Jiangxian asked with a smile, "Since there are 30,000 pestles and 100,000 pestles, will there be 1,000,000 pestles for a new ink ingot in the future?" Nodded hard, "I have this plan. As for when the work will start, it's temporarily undecided. It depends on the weather." Lin Jiangxian smiled. "The Runyue Peak in front of me is working hard and likes to make ink. The female national teacher of the Qingxin dynasty, Bai O, is fond of collecting rubbings. As for Howren, the last hermit of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, seemed to like to engrave. The young Takeo now has very elegant hobbies." He hesitated hard. "Could you ask the punch that Master Lin handed in Fanghu City back then?" Lin Jiangxian looked ahead and smiled and said, "When you ask me a fist one day, it will be clear naturally. I don't have to ask too much hard work. There are some taboos of the rivers and lakes and I still understand it with hard work. Asking a master of martial arts about the bottom boxing technique is almost equivalent to asking a sword repairer's magical powers. Alone at the top of martial arts in the world, he has been independent for nearly 300 years. There are 10 martial arts critics in the world of Qingming Jiazi, and 6 martial arts critics have been held. The masters have changed one crop after another. Lin Jiangxian is always the best in the world without any suspense. Lin Jiangxian is over 360 years old. For pure Takeo, this is a well-deserved old age, and it is simply a shocking miracle. Ordinary martial arts masters, even those martial arts masters at the end, want to live to 200 years old. It is extremely difficult. Just talking about lifespan compared to the Qixin and his like, can casually stay in the world for hundreds of years, which is a world of difference. Before Pei Cup, the #1 martial artist in the world was xianxia, who was nicknamed Long Bow, and the reason why he was able to live so long was because he turned to practice. But as a martial artist, Lin Jiangxian, who can be sincerely called Master of the Forest by the mountain monks, is just a pure martial artist. Therefore there have been gossips that in fact, Lin Jiangxian had already secretly entered the 11th realm of the illusory martial art. According to the speculation on the mountain, the 11 realms of martial arts can be roughly regarded as the 14 realms of the Qi practitioner. After Lin Jiangxian established his transcendent position as the world's first person in martial arts, he began to create a martial arts sect called Ashen. After more than 200 years of development, it has grown into a profound foundation. The deep, intertwined gangs do not lose the top sect on the mountain. In Naruzu, the Yashan family dominates, and even more surprisingly, the Qijin dynasty where Lin Jiangxian belongs, and the orthodox Taoist official with a degree, there is no fairy in a country. Without Shanzhua Yishio, the spirits and ghosts, especially the monster monks, are nowhere to be seen. A huge dynasty with a population of close to 80 million, there is no ghost, not to mention Ruzhou. This is an incredible thing in any world. Therefore, the people of the Qijin dynasty have not seen any weirds for more than 200 years. Lin Jiangxian only started accepting apprentices officially before Liang Jiazi. He successively accepted 4 disciples and 4 martial arts geniuses. They worshipped under the Master Lin, and all of them took place within just 1 Jiazi. After that, Lin Jiangxian stopped accepting disciples. So far he has nothing to say about his disciples. 4 direct disciples, 1 end at the top of the 3 mountains. The Wufu who can approach this feat, there are several worlds or the whole world. I am afraid that there is only the woman who is the of war in the world, Pei Cup. It is said that Ma Juxian, who is the big disciple of Pei Cup, has already reached the top of the mountain, and the other 2 female disciples, Doufenxia and Liao Qing'ai, are pure martial artists who are bottlenecked in the far travel realm. But even so, this is only a trip to the top of the mountain and 2 long distances, and there is still a long way to go with the direct biography of Lin Jiangxian, so it is still due to Pei Cup's acceptance of a direct biography called Chao Ci. As for the reincarnation disciples collected by these 4 people, together, there are probably more than 40 people. In addition, after 200 years of opening up the branches and leaves of Yashan, the disciples and grandchildren on the top of the genealogy are countless. It is not common for a gang of rivers and lakes to help hundreds of thousands of people in any world. In addition to serving as the royal worship of the dynasties of the Yashan family, the martial arts of Yashan helped suppress a country's martial arts, or set up martial arts halls, accepted disciples and taught art, and carried forward Yashan's own line of boxing. In the 2 states, dozens of sects still respect Lin Jiangxian as their ancestor. Lin Jiangxian once made a rule that he was only responsible for teaching boxing and was successful in martial arts. After the disciples walked out of the teacher's door, they were arrogant and grieved. The number of times that Lin Jiangxian took the initiative to ask people to fist was only a handful, but Lin Jiangxian didn't make a move. Just say that the Qi practitioner who died under the Lin Jiangxian Quan, just in the upper 5 realms, there will be 1 soaring 2 immortals. The reason why there is no Jade Purity realm is of course because of lack of confidence and absolutely not dare to provoke Lin Jiangxian and Yashan. Lin Jiangxian's life and death battle with the Ascension Realm Great Monk, in the words of the martial artist who watched the battle, was too boring because it was too thunder and the rain was too small, and he was killed by Lin Jiangxian less than half of the incense kung fu. This is still the Ascension Realm who spent half of his time with incense sticks. He used his life-saving escape method there, and finally fled all the way to the border of Ruzhou. He wanted to threaten Lin Jiangxian with the lives of hundreds of thousands of people in the capital of a small country. The author swears that he must ensure that he will not cause trouble within 500 years. It is clear that he wants Lin Jiangxian to throw a rat avoidance device. But as a result, this big monk who has nowhere to go has not escaped, and is still killed by Lin Jiangxian on the spot. On the street in the capital of that small country, the most important thing was an ascending realm's death, unexpectedly silently, without causing any disturbance. This is because Lin Jiangxian's fatal blow was too mysterious and did not give the ascended realm cultivator a chance to implicate Lin Jiangxian by killing innocent people. Even the few martial artists who followed all the way far away and the handful of them. The monks on the top of the mountain who watched the mountains and rivers were not sure how Lin Jiangxian punched. Therefore Lu Qin said it was very interesting. Generally speaking, according to Bai Yujing's rules, the Ascended Realm monk made this shameful decision in full view. Even if Lin Jiangxian left here, even if he did not hurt his innocence, the Ascended Realm monk had to take his own initiative to take a trip to Baiyu. Beijing is coming. With a good calculation, if Lin Jiangxian copes with missteps, insists on killing, and does not mind that the capital is killed by the two sides and kills the pond fish, then as long as it causes any casualties in the secular dynasty, on Bai Yujing's side Lin Jiangxian needs to bear the same guilt, and absolutely not light. Just betting Lin Jiangxian didn't dare to go with him to a certain tower in Bai Yujing? Read the Taoist book. A young great monk in the Ascendant Realm can afford hundreds of years. Are you Lin Jiangxian willing? Are you willing to die in Bai Yujing? The only accident was that the great monk underestimated Lin Jiangxian's boxing skills. Lin Jiangxian turned his head and looked at the pumice stone that seemed to have turned the sky upside down, and asked, "This is where the Taoist ancestor rests, that stepping stone?" He didn't try to hide anything, nodded gently. At first, I didn't recognize Deus's identity with great effort, but the expert must be an expert, otherwise he would not be able to sit on the pumice stone without knowing it. At that time it didn't take long for the hard work to reach the end, the boy with the appearance of a young Taoist boy, just watching hard work slowly walking on the top of the mountain, all silent and not disturbing each other. Afterwards the two sides talked a few words randomly. Before leaving, the young Taoist boy only left one sentence: who wouldn't dare to be the first in the world. From beginning to end, I worked hard without asking the other party's origin, and the other party did not explain their identity. After that, Runyue Peak began to lively. A young Taoist priest sneaked up to Runyue Peak, pretending to be snorting and punching all the way, and when he reached the middle of the mountain his face was flushed and then turned into an iron blue complexion. He looked like a genuine and pure martial artist, and then pretended to be badly injured, his face pale and shaky, stretched out his hand to cover his mouth, his eyes were white, he fell to the ground and pretended to be dead on the side of the mountain. I really deceived my hard work. When I left the mountain with hard work, I planned to move this stunned green golden statue martial artist to the foot of the mountain. As a result, the other party was struck by a carp. The man in the dragon and phoenix dragon. It was hard to find out afterwards that this person was the third teacher of Bai Yujing, Lu Shen, and he cheeked and stayed there for a while at the top of the mountain. Almost, this guy can talk about everything. It's just a silly talk. In the end, Lu Chen learned that he respected the Taoist ancestor. Before leaving, he also said a mysterious word that was too lazy to delve into it. People are externalized but not internalized. Xuanhuan's son Huaizhong also visited Runyue Peak. It was relatively congenial. The two sides also made ink together. Daochang's son said that the place of cultivation is just two things: how to eat, how to sleep, and how to eat and sleep well. Spiritual practice. Yaxing also traveled to Runyue Peak. At that time he was accompanied by a young book boy named Yuanyu. The old man once said that he should be suspicious in his studies, and he should not be suspicious when he is in doubt. Su Zi, with a young book boy carrying a bamboo box and a young girl carrying a large package full of pots and pans, Zhuo Yulong, and Dian Sunyang, both were born from the condensing and manifestation of Wenyun. After Su Zi, the two came together: Lu Qi from Shiufudi, also known as the Blessed Place, and his best friend Chao Group. Lu Qi entrusted her hard work to take care of one person. She was the only direct disciple who remained in the Qingming world, the young girl Wei Ying. She was also one of the 10 young candidates in the world. It's hard to say that if Wei Ying is in trouble she can come and hide at Runyue Peak and she won't agree to more. Not long ago, before Su Jun and Chao Gu, there was actually a strange man who was a monk in purple clothes who called himself Jiangxiu. Fortunately, the hard work has long been a surprise. The monk once sat down this night and only waited for dawn before going down the mountain and leaving. During the period, the barefooted monk only asked an absurd question of hard work. Are you a farmer and native, intending to become a Buddha with anger and supernatural powers? In the end, the purple-clothed monk who wandered here used his fingers as a pen to engrave the list. Jiangxiu frankly confessed that it was a slogan for himself, so that he didn't have to worry about his hard work. Only hate peace and nothing, kill the old bald donkey in the mountains. In the unlikely event that the Zen pass is broken, the world will fall for thousands of miles. Lin Jiangxian turned his head and looked at the inscription on the cliff above a stone. The sword was awe-inspiring and faintly bullfighting. However, the engraver set a band similar to the text barrier, and detained that sword intent. In the strokes, to put it simply, these 28 characters are an extremely good sword art, and at the same time, it is also a brilliant formation method that is like a lock sword talisman. A good sword fairy who is good at drawing dungeons for himself. The pure sword repair in the Qingming world, in fact, does not have as much as the Haoran world. After Lin Jiangxian regained his gaze, he smiled and asked, one by one, climbing and descending again, it seems that Runyue Peak U is regarded as a scenic spot for visiting immortals. Doesn't it seem inexplicable? Said Hard, it's good to get used to it. Lin Jiangxian nodded and said, indeed, habit becomes natural, and martial arts is also true. Kung Fu is only about memory. The boundless martial artist, the majestic fist spirit conceived, is like a god's shelter. For example, Lin Jiangxian, even if he slept thoroughly anytime and anywhere, he was not afraid of any so-called sneak attack by a martial arts master or a monk in the Ascension realm. A pure martial artist opened his eyes to look at the world, and closed his eyes to sleep like a god. It is the end of martial arts to the first level. Lin Jiangxian suddenly took out a lottery, shook it, and said with a smile, why don't you count it? Help you figure out when to go down the mountain? A look of doubt on his face. A pure martial artist, what's going on with this? Lin Jiangxian explained with a smile, I have nothing to do when I am free. I have seen some Taoist masters' techniques of surviving yang and hiding yin, seeking good fortune and avoiding evil, and learned a little about it. Shaking his head Hard, said, I don't believe this very much. Lin Jiangxian picked a nearby piece of rock, sat cross-legged, put the lottery in front of him, smiled and said, if the end is divided into 3 levels, this fortune-telling is similar. The first level, such as watching muddy water, human numerology, is those the subtle hydrology condenses and hides the veins of the water, which can estimate the general trend. On the next level, when you see fish swimming in the muddy water, all beings are alive and you have a so-called free will. Variables, linking the number of human auras to the fortunes of the heavens and the earth. The key is that people who fish in troubled waters can successfully strip themselves out. The last level is that water will come to the fore. This situation is hard to find, just like the building of the Yufu dynasty on the border of Yongzhou. At the Lotus Temple on the top of the underwater mountains, the Empress Zhu Xian intends to chop the branches of camphor tree branches to investigate the good and bad luck of the 4 states. Regardless of the result in the future, how to determine whether Zhu Xian's move is fortune-telling or fortune-telling? To tamper with fate? How to determine whether Zhu Xian did this, that all the sentient beings in the 4 states are in the same river of time? After an exhausting silence he said, Master Lin told me these things. At most, I pretended to be listening. Lin Jiangxian smiled and said, assuming that life is also destined, how can you sigh and be sad? In fact, through hard work, it is certain that Lin Jiangxian is an outsider. It's an intuition because I don't like the person in front of me because of hard work. But in fact, Lin Jiangxian's reputation in the Qingming world is quite good. The fist is high, has the style of a master, never kills indiscriminately, and is very polite in dealing with people and things. When asked about the fist, it is often clicked, and it is more like a kind of teaching fist and feeding fist without the status of a master or apprentice. And because of hard work he almost never gets close to or hates anyone. The reason why he rejects this Master Lin from the bottom of his heart is simply that the other party's outsider identity. The previous Confucian temple Yaxing, Suzi, Luqizhao group, and Runyue Peak had experienced similar uncomfortable feelings after hard work, so it is definitely not my own illusion. I must know that Lin Jiangxian is not a native of the Qingming world, certainly not many. Even Bai Yujing is one of the few. Lin Jiangxian looked towards the Bai Yujing in the center of the world. Yu Do is in charge of the world, handling affairs within 100 years, the methods are too overbearing, and do not leave the slightest leeway in others. This led to a bad review of Independent Husband, and of course no one dared to publicly declare this. Strangely speaking, even Sun Huaizhong, the Xuantu who regarded praising Bai Yujing as a commonplace meal, never commented on Yu Do's name, and did not add fuel to the fire. It is said that there was a time when I had a drink with a few old friends in the end, and the old Guanju only gave a compromise that was neither praise nor derogation. It was only 3 words, not too much. 3 palms teach Lu Shintai after being lazy. Their little junior brother Shanqing is now an immortal who has just left the customs, and is far from alone. At that time, the 3,000 Taoist officials in Qingming world rushed to wuxialover, occupying the top of the mountain on the easternmost side, and continuing their respective Taoist lineages. Among them, Bai Yujing occupied nearly half of the seats. Perhaps for the young Taoist disciple of the Taoist named Shanqing, it was an experience. Whether he could preside over the overall situation, help Bai Yujing gain a firm foothold, and defeat many Taoist officials including Xuandu Guan and Sui Qigong. So next Bai Yujing will be busy. Previously, Wu Zhou appeared in the Yufu dynasty. Nominally it was to open up the old dojo. It seemed to be justified, but in fact it was she who stopped Bai Yujing to stop Zhu Xian. Lin Jiangxian smiled knowingly. Obviously this female crown named Taiyin was with Bai Yujing, or the invincible person, and did not negotiate a certain deal. So, don't provoke a woman, especially a 14th level woman. Built. After hesitating hard, he lifted the flask in his hand and asked, Master Lin, do you want a drink? It is a hard-brewed pine wine. In addition to pine flowers, there are also shelled pine nuts, which are mashed and stored. Drinking this pine wine can moisturize the soul and fat the 5 internal organs, and it is a good way to stay on the face. Lin Jiangxian declined and said, I don't like to drink. Besides, life is drunk without alcohol. I have seen more than 300 autumns and the temples have stars. Lin Jiangxian was about to leave, put away the lottery, stood up, smiled and invited, in the future you can go to Ruzhou for a trip down the mountain. Because there are guests here. Hardly said, follow the fate, don't make promises. At this moment, a group of people suddenly appeared. A tall old Taoist priest with 3 long beards and a handsome appearance. The prosperous Dao Qi directly suppressed Runyue Peak's fist so that the whole body outside the mountain was weak. The water started to make huge waves. Ancient Luobaetan Bixiadong Cave Master, and later Donghaiguan Taoist Master. There are 3 people standing beside the old Taoist, standing together like a slope. The shortest little Taoist boy, whose real name is Sun Lanling, and the Taoist name is Jin Jing, has always been a fire-burning Taoist boy who followed the master of Lao Guan. There is also Yuan Lu, the king of rice thief, and Wu Fu Qigu, who are all willing boys of the Qingxin dynasty. The veteran Taoist said straightforwardly, bring the apprentice who has just received, come here to worship the mountain. Adopting a disciple is like raising a girl. The most important thing is to be strict in and out of, and be cautious in making friends. In the last 100 years, Wang Yuanlu has had few opportunities to go out and hang out. As his only direct disciple, he doesn't have an ascendant realm and he has the face to wander outside. As for this person with the surname Qi, it's an incidental oil bottle. He has admired you for a long time. He wants to follow him and see Runyue Peak's hard work. He is sure whether it is or a ghost. After hard work, he still didn't get up, but turned a blind eye to the Bixiao cave master and turned a deaf ear to the words of the old Taoist priest. As for those who worship the mountain, the monstrous monks at the top of the mountain, this kind of grotesque words, hard work can only be regarded as wind in the ear. Standing on the rock, Lin Jiangxian smiled calmly, holding a fist and saluting, Yashan Lin Jiangxian, I have seen Bixiao cave master. The old Taoist twisted his beard and smiled, there is a Taoist Chunyang in front and a Taoist Lin Jiangxian in the back. They all like to go backwards so much? Lin Jiangxian smiled and said nothing. Even if the secret of the secret is leaked by the Bixiao cave master, it does not matter, anyway the world will know this soon. Wang Yuanlu and Na Runyue Peak had one host and one guest, and they fought with each other. Qigu was embarrassed. For the martial arts master of the Qingming world, one is to check the quality of the martial arts in the same realm, and the other is to climb the mountain from the foot of the Runyue Peak to see how many steps can be taken. After the embarrassment, Qigu only felt that following Bixiao cave master to this Runyue Peak this time was a real profit, not in vain. He actually saw Lin Jiangxian and the hardworking two in one breath, but it was a pity that Bai O, who had not married before, was not there. The world recognizes that one way of martial arts is one way to go to the dark. The most troublesome thing is short-lived. Qigu has several wishes and visions in this life. First, of course, to marry the White Lotus Root as a wife. Of course, Zhu Xian, the female emperor of the Yufu dynasty, is also fine. It's upside down. Qigu is not that particular about taboos. I don't need to envy Su Jun of the Great Tide sect anymore. When Qigu thought of this, he had to fight with high spirits and felt that it was a little bit hard to learn boxing. There are many genres of Taoism, each with their legal traditions, and their pedigrees are complex, and their pedigrees are far greater than those of Confucianism and Buddhism. Over the past 10,000 years, there has been a grand occasion of 3,000 side gates and 800 left Taoism in history. It can be said that the left side door is chaotic. If you add in those outside ways that don't flow into the stream, where only supplementation and Fanghangshu are used, the knowledge will be greatly improved. Every time Qigu heard people talk about Su Jun, he would think of the concubine in the gatehouse, and then think of those men and women fighting. Chiga's second wish is to ask Lin Jiangxian about the secret of longevity. As for the questioning box, forget it. No matter how arrogant Chigu is, he still knows that the sky is a little thick. Bai O, who is about to kill someone with a punch, can make the martial artist of the same realm not dare to ask her for a punch at all. Lin Jiangxian, however, was able to make the world martial artist not want to question him at all. This gap is actually huge. Runyue Peak is hard work, probably somewhere in between. The main thing is that it suffers from never going down the mountain and not actively discussing with others. Chigu gathered the sound into a line and asked Lin Jiangxian in secret, "Master Lin Jr. Chigu, can I ask you a question?" Lin Jiangxian smiled and said, "Just ask." Chigu cautiously said, "How do we live to be 300 years old as a pure martial artist? Those ranger novels that I went to street stalls when I was young, the books say heroes always have big ambitions. As for the heroes, they are often ambitious. But on Kiga's side, speaking of it, he still looks high, walks far, and lives for a long time. According to the world's martial artist Jiazi, Lin Jiangxian is too invincible and doesn't pass too many punches, especially after he kills a young, ascendant realm. It will be even more difficult to get out of the phone. It is inevitable that there is a kind of squatting in the pit and not shit. Suspicion. On the contrary, Jiang Zhaoma, the host of Baiyujing Zikalu, almost every Jiazi, there will be a question boxing, go to Yashan, Ruzhou, find Lin Jiangxian for martial arts. That's why Sun Daochang gave the Baiyujing Tianxian, who was named Changxiang, a nickname of seeking defeat. If you don't know the truth about Jiang Zhaoma and Lin Jiangxian, every Jiazi's questioning boxing, just listen to the nickname, it seems that you will not lose too much, true invincible. Lin Jiangxian smiled and gave the answer, first enter the end and then go to the level of the gods. During this process, ask people to be careful not to fall into the root of the disease. Some elixir on the mountain can be picked up to nourish. Chigu was speechless. This Master Lin teasing me, saying that doesn't mean not saying it. Lao Guanzhu glanced at Jiang Xiu's inscription on the cliff and smiled. Lin Jiangxian bid farewell and left. The old Guanzhu said in his heart, "If we go down the mountain on foot, let's talk about it later." Lin Jiangxian smiled and nodded. After that, the old Guanzhu took the lead to sit on the boulder where he was hard working. Let Wang Yuanluo not be too restrictive, saying that you and the hardworking are your own family members, and you are too polite to make a difference. I didn't mind the fact that Bixiaodong's master didn't see it. I took out a few pots of homebrewed pine wine, and took some roasted pine nuts and simmered taro to serve the guests. The Taoist priest in cotton robe like a thin bamboo pole, took out a few pairs of bamboo chopsticks from his sleeves, wiped them under his armpit and handed them to Chigu. Chigu became accustomed to it. He took the chopsticks and started drinking. Looking at him, Xiaodaotong rolled his eyes and did not take down the chopsticks. Wang Yuanyun took a sip of the wine, and the wine was strong enough and he immediately gave a sharp shot. Lao Guanzhu sneered and said, "You Jimenzi, have you been drinking hemp?" Wang Yuanlu pretended to be deaf and dumb. Even if the two sides have the status of master and apprentice, they don't see how fearful Wang Yuanlu is on the side of the old master. Wang Yuanlu, an old rice thief, and Su Jun, a ghost nicknamed Little Ghost, are both resilient and the most promising. Lao Guanzhu raised his head and squinted at the sky. There was an imperceptible trace, which was the trajectory of Su Jun and Daelu Chauga. When he raised his eyes, he could see this vein, but it may not be necessary for ordinary monks. The old Taoist turned his gaze, looked at Baiyujing and sneered. Everyone in the world is scolding Yudo, but they all want to become Yudo. Poor is invincible. There are two places in Baiyujing. They have always been crazy. One is a sutra master who focuses on exegesis, and the other is a heavenly master who watches the stars at night. It is estimated that they are even more crazy now. Acquired astronomy to sleep late at night, Moonlight Cloud hates starvation. Strongly supporting the old eyes are weak, and still recognize Ziwei from the horizon. After drinking wine on the side of Runyue Peak, the old master only took a group of people down the mountain and found Lin Jiangxian. The old master joked with his own inner voice, "The wind frightened the mountains and the birds, and the clouds fell through the Tianhe River. It is difficult to send home books, and the geese returned south again." In the Qijin dynasty of Ruzhou, there was a big river in the territory, and the perennial haze was filled with haze. The old master suddenly asked, "Is there any thoughts after seeing Jiang Xiu's sword intent?" Lin Jiangxian shook his head and said, "I don't have any thoughts. Pan Dao has some feelings, melancholy, everything goes wrong in the world and the three of them go together and return." About 10,000 years ago, Qin Qing had all joined hands to observe in Long June, and asked about the battle of Jiantua Yueshan. Lin Jiangxian smiled and said, Senior is insightful and aware of the details. I just hope Senior can help keep this secret. The old Guanju expression played with the taste. You are so sure, Dao Zhu will not tell the two disciples about this matter? Lin Jiangxian asked, even if I said it, what will happen? The master nodded. Looking at the slender dirt road in the mountains, the old master no longer spoke in his heart and smiled. Someday there are steppes and mountains are not mountains anymore. A few minutes away, it was the weak water passing by Runyue Peak. If there is no bridge, the water is still water. Wang Yuanlu sighed. Obviously there is an enlightenment behind the words. Chigu has always been unable to hear the words of God, Shinto, and Tao, which are the favorites of this kind of worldly masters. Lin Jiangxian said, does Senior have any advice? Old Guanju smiled and said, treasure everything and cherish it all. Lin Jiangxian nodded, obviously not a cultivator, but displayed the magical powers of the mountains and rivers. The old Guanju stopped and looked into the distance. In ancient times, xianxia once divided the sword into 4 veins, which was magnificent. Under this azure underworld, there is the Taoist sword immortal line of Xuanhuan, which has an orderly inheritance and can stand tall. If you add the jianghu, a monk who is eager to move, with unique swordsmanship and unparalleled in the world, it is said that he once threatened to remove a demon from the world. Now Xiandu Temple has added a Bai Yi who was vast in the world in the past. Haosu, the last criminal officer of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, is now in the Baiyujing Xinxiao city. It seems that 10,000 years ago the first few sword veins were passed down from the world, and finally on the Qingming world, there seemed to be some kind of mysterious gathering unity? If Chen Pingan came to Qingming world again in the future, it would be lively. Just to talk about the Qingming world today, whether it is a sword repair or a pure martial artist, as long as they gather together to chat and do something, then there is no way to avoid a young man in the world whose surname is Chen. Especially the sword repairers here, it's not an exaggeration to say that of the 10 young sword repairers, 9 think they are Chen Yingguan, and 1 thinks Chen Pingyan is an old man. Lin Jiangxian returned to Yashan Ruzhou. In Baiyujing, in the city of Xinxiao, criminal officer Haosu began to retreat and refine his sword. On the border to the south of Ruzhou in Yingchuan County, a small remote country in a little-known Taoist temple, a young man who only remembers his name is Qin Tsong, hangs a piece of broken porcelain ornaments around his waist, and has not yet given the urn. Began to formally practice. End of this chapter. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.